Chapter 587. Fang Yuan was a vigilant person. He had always thought that no one in the world could be relied on, the only one he could truly rely on was himself. Thus, when he obtained the killer move 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King, he started to research it. This killer move was originally modified from his foundation. Moreover, these days, under Mo Yao's guidance, Fang Yuan's refinement path attainment had deepened and his horizons had changed. Therefore, he understood the 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King like the back of his hand, clearly and thoroughly. Right now, when he saw this perfected killer move, he did not need to experiment to know that this move was extremely perfected. Mo Yao had removed many supplementary goo worms from the original foundation. The core and 6-pillar goo worms were not changed, but he added several supplementary goo worms. Fang Yuan exclaimed in admiration as he sensed the ingenuity in it. In his mind, Mo Yao's will explained, "This is all thanks to the Wu Guan Pan and Chang. With their experience and knowledge, I was able to modify it to this extent. This killer move is already perfected to the extreme. As long as it does not exceed 30 minutes, no matter how many times it is used, it will not accumulate corpse energy in the body and cause livor mortis." Fang Yuan nodded, knowing that Mo Yao was speaking the truth. This killer move was indeed perfected to the extreme. According to this train of thought, it was already the best. Unless immortal goo were added in the future, or the core goo worms were changed. But if immortal goo were added, the original system would be broken and would need to be reconstructed. It would be completely different, like the saying, pull one hair and the whole body will be affected. If the core goo worms were changed, it would be like changing the entire train of thought. Changing the train of thought. The entire killer move would be completely different. After reconstruction. Rather than calling it 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King, it would be more accurate to call it a new killer move. All in all, this killer move 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King, be it the core goo, the pillar goo, or the supplementary goo worms, they were all perfected to the extreme. There was no longer anything that could be modified. Even though there were still repercussions, after 30 minutes, the corpse energy would cause damage to the goo master's body. If the time was exceeded, the goo master might even turn into a zombie. But this was caused by the goo master's improper use. It could be avoided. Because no matter how many times it was used, it would not accumulate livor mortis. Goo masters could activate it frequently and obtain the effect of activating the killer move for a long time. However, Fang Yuan was not satisfied with such a great achievement. He was still somewhat dissatisfied. "If you have any other ideas to perfect the killer move, I'm all ears." Mo Yao sneered. Reaching this step, the 6-armed Heavenly Zombie King is already the limit. There is no room for improvement. But there is one thing that I am not satisfied with, that is the after effects of this killer move. Fang Yuan said. It has been perfected. The current 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King's power had doubled again, and it could last for as long as an incense stick's time. It is enough for you to deal with all the challenges in the mortal world. What else are you dissatisfied with? You have to know, any killer move is a combination of goo worms. It is the use of goo worms. There must be some drawbacks. The after effects of killer moves were unavoidable, but they were severe. Some were weak. Such a strength path killer move is among the top 5 in my memory. Brat, don't be greedy. Mo Yao lectured. Fang Yuan snorted coldly. His imaginary enemies were goo immortals, existences that had transcended the mortal world. With 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King, even if Fang Yuan gave up enslavement path, he could move unhindered in the mortal world. But against goo immortals, it was far from enough. Fighting an immortal as a mortal, this goal was too arrogant, it was too sensational. Fang Yuan felt disdain, and it was not convenient for him to tell Mo Yao. Immediately, he continued, preparedness leads to success, unpreparedness leads to failure. What if one day, due to special circumstances, I use the killer move too much and turn into a zombie? I am also clear that the killer move 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King cannot be improved anymore. Next, I need to get rid of this after effect. Mo Yao understood Fang Yuan's meaning. She fell into silence. Fang Yuan was young and successful, and Mo Yao did not expect him to have such a cautious side. In truth, this made Mo Yao look at Fang Yuan in a different light. This lad has talent, resources, fortuitous encounters, he has perseverance and knows when to yield or when to stand tall. On one hand, he strives forward bravely, on the other hand, he is steady and cautious, taking everything into consideration. Sooner or later, this lad's name will shake the world. The silence was short. Soon, Mo Yao said, to get rid of this after effect, it is somewhat troublesome. Six-arm Heavenly Zombie King is not an ordinary zombie. The zombie energy is extremely dense. Once a Gu master transforms, they cannot even use yin-yang rotation Gu. You are a grand refinement grandmaster, even you have no way. Fang Yuan did not believe it. Mo Yao was not affected by Fang Yuan's provocation, her tone was still calm. I need a rank 5 Gu master to completely transform into 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King, and then experiment on their body. I need this experimenter's full cooperation, I need to grasp their state at all times, physical aspect, mental state, perception, these are all important information for reference. Mo Yao did not want to think too deeply and exhaust herself. She used the same trick again, using a living person as an experiment to replace the process of her deep thinking and difficult deductions. Fang Yuan frowned, rank 5 Gu master. And they need to cooperate fully. That's right, it is best if they are willing. Because when I use slavery Gu and so on to control them, it will interfere with the proper expression of their emotions, and also destroy the experience and feeling of transforming into a zombie. This was difficult. If Fang Yuan wanted to resolve the problem of 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King's after effect, he would need to find a rank 5 Gu master, and he or she would need to be willing to listen to Fang Yuan's words, and take the risk of dying to fully cooperate with the experiment. Where could Fang Yuan find such a person? 3 days later. Central Control Room. From the ink whirlpool, the owner token rose up and slowly flew into Fang Yuan's hands. Activating the refinement path killer move ink transformation once again, the pentagonal owner token turned into a hexagon. Fang Yuan was half happy and half worried. He was happy because he now had a hexagon owner token. Once He Lolan's owner token reached 4 corners, he would be able to snatch it and refine it into a 10-edge owner token. With the 10-edge owner token, he would be able to inherit a true inheritance of Giant Sun Immortal. An immortal venerable's true inheritance was a huge temptation to anyone. He was worried because for this 6th ink transformation, Fang Yuan had really emptied his savings. To raise funds, he sold the immortal Gu remnant recipes again, causing these remnant recipes to lose their value. At the same time, he sold large numbers of rock men, fox groups, wolf groups, Gu worms, and even precious hairy men, as well as a few air bubble fish. For example, the rank 4 emotion poem Gu, golden dragon Gu, golden wind Gu, several rank 5 spring egg Gu, Vajra angry gaze Gu, touch gold Gu, loose bones Gu, crow 7 Gu, and clues Gu were all sold. Right now, I only have the enslavement and strength path Gu worms in my aperture. In Hu Immortal Blessed Land, there is one of Blood Sea ancestors' true inheritances, rank 4 blood skull Gu. Rank 3 Bone Flesh Unity Gu, as well as Yin-Yang Rotation Gu which has already used up its Yin Gu. There are also some Stargate Gu, Whole Earth Gu, Connecting Heaven Gu, Divine Sense Gu, Burial Soul Toad and other supplementary Gu worms. Some of these Gu worms were extremely important and could not be sold easily. Some were absolutely necessary and needed to be used. Hu Immortal Blessed Land has almost been squeezed dry by me, I need to recuperate for a period of time. But I have the 6-edge owner token, I can control any 6 floors of 88-point Jinyang Tower. I can take away the rewards from each of the 6 levels at will. This amount of wealth is extremely abundant, if I take it all, my wealth will increase by over 60 times. Fang Yuan had his own plans. But now, he could not touch these riches. He Lulan had gathered a large number of experts and was already at the final round of the 5th floor. Not long in the future, he would have a one-edge owner token. With this token, he could check the rewards of any floor in 88-point Jinyang Tower. If Fang Yuan took away the rewards, wouldn't he be exposed? At the final stage, when Imperial Court Blessed Land is about to close and everyone is sent out, I will take away the rewards. At that time, no one will know. Boom! The bear paw slammed heavily, the ground shook and rocks flew everywhere like cannonballs. As the dust settled, 5 to 6 horsecart-sized bear paws slowly rose up, leaving behind a huge crater on the ground. The rank 4 Gu master who was unlucky enough to be hit by the bear paw turned into a pile of red meat paste, mixed with bone fragments and brain matter. It is too fast. No one could react in time. The final round is truly harder than ascending to heaven. This is only a flying bear phantom, it only has half the strength of the real body. If it was a real desolate beast flying bear, we would not even be able to escape. The Gu masters on the battlefield were all injured, they were in a sorry state and had lingering fear. The one guarding the 100th round of the 5th floor was the phantom of a desolate beast flying bear. It was huge, like a small mountain. Its body was covered in white fur, white as snow. It had all sorts of excellent wild goo on its body. Its attacks were fierce, but its movements were light and quick like lightning, it did not match its fat body. The battle had not even lasted 30 minutes, but the Gu masters had already suffered disastrous losses. Lord Tribe Leader, let's retreat. This time, we were mainly probing it, we have already investigated the Gu worms on the flying bear, we have already achieved our goal. Our goal has already been achieved. Sun Shihan stood beside He Lulan, advising. He Lulan frowned, looking around the battlefield. He was a person who knew his soldiers well, he immediately understood that his side's morale was low. Ever since I entered 88-point Jinyang Tower, the strongest opponent I have met is this flying bear phantom. To destroy it, we are far from enough, we need to gather more helpers. He Lulan made up his mind, he snorted and said, retreat. Sun Shihan let out a sigh of relief. Not only him, the other Gu masters had thoughts of retreating, but because of Black Tyrant's reputation, they did not dare to say it. Chapter 588. Everyone left 88-point Jinyang Tower. He Lulan sent out an order that night to recruit experts. He was this alliance leader, according to the rules, the entire army was under his command. Everyone knew of the Black Tyrant's ferocious name. Adding on the time when he opened 88-point Jinyang Tower to the public without asking for compensation, he was even more benevolent. With both benevolence and authority, He Lulan's influence reached its peak. Thus, as soon as the order was given, it immediately stirred up a storm. Almost everyone who was summoned showed up. Wolf King Chang Shan Yin, Water Demon Hao Ji Lu, Demonic Path Twin Demons Gao Yang and Zhu Zai, Little Pony Venerable Maing Jie, Fox Marshal Tang Miao Ming, White Fairy Shi Shui, Shadow Sword Expert Bian Si Xian, Tai Bai Yunsheng, Lu Shuang, Tao Yu, Gu Guolong, Dou Yi, Nie Yiqing, Yi Luisang. On the day of the alliance meeting, the hall was filled with shining generals and heroes, causing the wind and clouds to rumble. Old sir, with you here, you are like a huge pillar supporting the sky, I do not have to worry about morale dropping. Ha ha ha. He Lulan sat on the main seat, looking around with great ambition, he laughed loudly. Among those present, Tai Bai Yunsheng was the most famous, he practiced medicine and saved countless people. Even He Lulan and Chang Shan Yin could not compare to him. But the one to the right of He Lulan was not Tai Bai Yunsheng, it was Wolf King Chang Shan Yin. Fame was one thing, but combat strength was another. After the Imperial Court battle, everyone recognized Fang Yuan as the most powerful. Dual Cultivator, Flying Master, Enslavement Master, these halos stacked on top of one's head, it was extremely glorious, thus Fang Yuan was ranked first, no one had any objections. Thus, after He Lulan greeted Tai Bai Yunsheng, he said to Fang Yuan, Brother Shan Yin. In this battle, let's see how powerful you are. If you pass, I will reward you with 50%. He understood Fang Yuan's character. He wouldn't do anything without benefits. Thus, he tried to entice him with benefits. The reward for the final checkpoint was no small matter. As soon as He Lulan opened her mouth, she gave half of the profits to Fang Yuan. This meant that he and the others could only split the remaining half. It was a matter of vital interests. Sounds of discussion could be heard in the hall. Many people were dissatisfied with such a division, but no one had the guts to openly question the Black Tyrant's division and offend the mighty Wolf King in public. Alright, let's divide it like this. Fang Yuan nodded his head. His cold and arrogant gaze swept across the hall, and the buzzing sounds stopped. What's wrong, Elder Pan Ping? He Lulan asked around. Pan Ping came from the demonic path, and now he had joined He tribe, becoming an external elder. As the current leader of the He family, He Lulan couldn't summon Pan Ping. This made He Lulan a little dissatisfied. Actually, he didn't know that it was Pan Ping or the Chang clan's #1 elder, Chang Biao. He also didn't come. But Chang Biao's surname was Chang, and he was a Chang tribe member. He Lulan was hindered by Fang Yuan, so she closed one eye. Fang Yuan did not bat an eyelid. The news of Pan and Chang's deaths had not spread yet. That was because clearing 88-point Jinyang Tower would normally take several days. Or even half a month. The harder the checkpoint, the longer it would take. Especially people like Pan and Chang. They did not have Giant Sun's bloodline, and every time they entered or left Truyang Tower, they would need a guest token. Because of this, these outsiders treasured every chance they had. If possible, they would often live and eat in Truyang Tower. He Lulan had just finished speaking when his trusted aide He Shu stood up and reporting to Lord Tribe Leader, Elder Pan Ping and Lord Chang Biao went to the 7th floor not long ago. I sent people to inform them, but found that the 7th floor's checkpoint has a complicated terrain. It is a huge maze. Letter Gu are forbidden in the maze, and there are wild wolf groups roaming in the depths. Our subordinates searched for many days, but only found some traces of battle, and did not find Lord Pan and Chang. He Lulan snorted coldly, waving his hand. Forget it, let's not wait for them, the guest token has been prepared, we will set off tomorrow morning. On the second day, everyone majestically charged into the 5th floor. This was the largest scale of Gu masters working together since the opening of 88-point Jinyang Tower. It attracted the gazes of countless people in the sacred palace. The 5th floor's final checkpoint was a barren mountain range. The brown mountain soil was as hard as iron and stone, there was no vegetation. The moment everyone arrived, the flying bear phantom sensed them, it raised its head and roared, exploding the air and echoing like thunder. Swoosh! But in the dusky yellow sky, a white whirlwind swept past, pressing down. The experts scattered in all directions. The flying bear phantom heavily smashed on the ground, with a loud sound, the earth shook and the mountains shook. Intense winds blew, causing many people to be unable to stand still. It is truly ferocious. Pei Yan Fei's expression was solemn. If he had taken it head-on, he would have lost a layer of skin even if he did not die. It is all thanks to tribe leader He Lulan's reminder, otherwise, we would have been ambushed by this bear the moment we entered. Gu Guolong said with lingering fear as he looked at the huge pit, at the reckless roar of the flying bear. This is called learning from experience. The last time we entered, we were ambushed by the flying bear, 5 experts died on the spot. He Xiao-yi gritted his teeth, replying hatefully. Brother Shan-yin, it's up to you. He Lulan urged. According to the battle plan, the first wave of attacks would be launched by the enslavement path Gu masters, to exhaust the flying bear phantom's battle strength. Needless to say, large groups of wolves charged towards the flying bear phantom from all directions, from the sky to the ground. In the sky, there was the azure wolf group. On the ground, there were white eyes wolves, frenzy wolves, blood forest wolves and so on. Fang Yuan had brought 400,000 ordinary wolves with him. At once, the wolf group covered the sky, like a huge wave in the sea, they flooded towards the island like flying bear phantom. Howl! The flying bear's roar shook heaven and earth. Howl! The wolf group howled, not willing to show weakness. An intense battle erupted, creating a rain of blood. The flying bear phantom's forepaws slammed, each attack killing dozens of wolves. The wolves could only cause harassment, only the mutated wolf group could slightly injure the flying bear phantom. But the essence of enslavement path was to drive down the enemy at the same time. The main point was to exhaust the enemy as much as possible. Fang Yuan commanded the wolf group, suddenly fluttering like the wind. Suddenly, like a pile of snow pressing down, the flying bear phantom seemed to have fallen into a swamp. It slaughtered and attacked, but could not break out of the encirclement. So, this is the mastery of a master. Wild beasts are wild beasts, they do not have human intelligence. Chang Shan Yin is toying with them. The beast group is like a work of art under the Wolf King's command. Everyone was dazzled. Enslavement Path Gu Masters Tang Miaoming and He Qi Sheng. They could see the intricacies behind this, they could not help but feel admiration and admiration. But good times did not last. The flying bear phantom suddenly stopped moving, its mouth bulged and it spat out. With this spit, heaven and earth changed color, starlight shined brightly. It was like a galaxy. Rank 5, Galaxy Gu. The galaxy roared down like a dragon or a python, sweeping away the wolf group wherever it went. Be it the frenzy wolves, blood forest wolves and so on, they were swept away by the galaxy and whittled away. Some used defensive Gu and struggled to hold on, some did not, they quickly turned into specks of starlight. At once, the wolf group suffered heavy casualties. Fang Yuan's gaze was solemn, he ignored it. He persisted for a while longer. Only when there were less than half of the wolves left did he call off the wolf group. Tang Miaoming and He Qi Sheng immediately mobilized their beast groups. They took over. Of these two, the former was called Little Fox General, he was a quasi-master. In terms of enslavement path attainment, he was only below Fang Yuan in the sacred palace. The latter was an enslavement path Gu master nurtured by the super force He tribe. Although he did not have the talent to become a master, he had a solid foundation and great strength. Tang Miaoming controlled the fox group, while He Qi Sheng controlled the eagle group, one heaven and one earth, they worked together. But the flying bear phantom became even more ferocious, the galaxy encircled it and subdued it. With another loud roar, intense winds blew and white clouds appeared in the sky. In an instant, the winds condensed into the shape of a tiger, turning into a wind tiger. The white clouds condensed into the shape of a dragon, turning into a cloud dragon. Rank 5, Wind Tiger Cloud Dragon Gu. Thousands of wind tigers and cloud dragons charged, clashing with the fox group and the eagle group. At once, the battlefield became noisy, it was a scene of carnage. Oh no, if this goes on. Tang Miaoming's forehead was covered in cold sweat, she had a splitting headache as she gritted her teeth. The battle was too intense, she wanted to preserve the fox group, thus her meticulous control caused her soul to be consumed to the limit. As for He Qi Sheng, his situation was even worse than hers. The fox group was still resisting, but He Qi Sheng's eagle group had already been slaughtered by the wind tiger cloud dragon, they could not attend to one thing. The other Gu masters retreated again and again, but there was no surprise on their faces. Star River Gu and Wind Tiger Cloud Dragon Gu were found in the previous probing, everyone was mentally prepared. Did you find it? He Lulan asked the investigative Gu master beside her. The investigative Gu master was very nervous, he was sitting cross-legged on the ground, concentrating on activating his Gu worm. His brows were tightly furrowed, he replied with a trembling voice, I found the location of the Star River Gu, it is in the flying bear's mouth, residing on the longest fang on the left side. As for the other Gu worms, we need to continue investigating. Dealing with fierce beasts was different from dealing with Gu masters. The Gu worms on fierce beasts were wild Gu, they could be captured. And the goo worms on the goo masters were basically all refined. This was the reason why He Lulan ordered people to investigate the location of the wild goo worms. As long as they could capture the wild goo on the flying bear, it would be much easier to destroy the flying bear phantom. Even if they could not capture it, they could just destroy it. Goo worms were very fragile, like the rank 6 spring-autumn cicada. Fang Yuan only needed to pinch it lightly to kill it. Wild beasts did not have apertures, wild goo lived on their bodies. This was a huge weakness. He Lulan snorted, shouting, "Continue investigating." He was not satisfied with this result. The Star River goo was residing in the flying bear's mouth. It was too difficult to capture it. While they were talking, the situation became even worse. Tang Miaoming and He Qi Sheng are unable to hold on. Pei Yan Fei's expression was grim. Chapter 589. Wild goo could directly absorb the primeval energy in the air and could be activated at will without any worry of primeval essence depletion. But in an intense battle, the more it progressed, the fewer times the wild goo would be able to activate. When the battle situation turned bad, these wild goo would rely on their instinctive reaction to danger to leave their host and escape on the spot. Thus, when attacking ferocious beasts, especially beast kings or desolate beasts, their firepower would usually be fierce in the early stages of the battle. After the battle continued for some time, their attacks would gradually lose their ferocity. Even so, we cannot let the fox group and eagle group suffer losses like this. Lord Chang Shan Yin, please make a move. He Xiao Yi said from the side. Make a move, make a move. Fang Yuan crossed his arms, standing proudly at one side and sneered, "According to the previous battle plan, I will make a move first, then the two of them will take over." This will repeat over and over again, with each round lasting 15 minutes. But right now, they have not even lasted 15 minutes, it is not my turn to make a move. If they went on stage now, the wolf group would only suffer the cruel slaughter of the flying bear phantom. Although they would achieve the goal of exhausting the flying bear's battle strength, if they could reduce their losses, Fang Yuan would be happy to do so. As for how severe the other people's losses were, what did that have to do with Fang Yuan? He Xiao Yi was furious, but due to Fang Yuan's status, he could only suppress his anger. Wolf Wang Da's people, everyone has to give it their all in this battle. Right now, Tang Miaoming and He Qi Sheng are fighting a bloody battle, but Lord is just watching from the sidelines. Isn't this too much? You dare to lecture me? Fang Yuan raised his brows, his killing intent surging. He crossed his arms. But a monstrous arm suddenly shot out from his back. The monstrous arm was heavy and powerful, but moved like lightning, smashing towards He Xiao Yi. He Xiao Yi had never thought that Fang Yuan would dare to do this in public. He dared to try to kill him in such a crucial battle. Before the fist even reached him, he felt a strong gust of wind blowing towards him, causing his face to feel pain. An incomparable sense of fear and danger instantly filled his heart. At the crucial moment, the awareness that he had developed from many years of battle finally saved his life. He didn't even think about it. Almost at the first moment, he mobilized his defensive goo worms and barely put up 3 layers of defense. He was a defensive goo master, precisely because he specialized in defense. During the struggle for the throne, He Lulan had sent him to Fang Yuan's side to protect Fang Yuan. But in the great battle that followed, He Xiaoyi was concerned about his own safety and threw this mission to the back of his mind. Fang Yuan was left alone on the battlefield. The strange punches were as easy as breaking dry weeds. In a short period of time, his 3 defenses were shattered, and finally smashed into his chest. Crack! A crisp sound was heard. He Xiaoyi's sternum was completely shattered. A huge force surged forth, and his entire body was sent flying like a cannonball. He flew in the air, spitting out a trail of blood. Then, with a loud bang, it smashed into a small mound several hundred steps away. With a loud bang, the smoke and dust dispersed. Half of his body was embedded in the mound, unconscious. he instantly lost the ability to fight. Wolf Wang Da's people. What's going on? What's going on? Why did they attack all of a sudden? He Shui persuaded Wolf Wang Da's people to immediately join the battle, but in the end, both sides had a disagreement, and Wolf King suddenly attacked, sending He Shui flying. Everyone was in an uproar at this shocking change. The internal conflict came so suddenly, and was so serious. He Shui's identity was not simple. He was one of the 3 commanders of the Black Banner Army, and was also an important person in He tribe's higher-ups. Fang Yuan hit him with such a heavy blow. This was no different from openly provoking He Lulan. Once it caused a conflict between He Lulan and Chang Shanyin. Not only would this battle be ruined, it might even cause a political storm in the entire sacred palace. Wolf King, what is going on? I want to hear your explanation. He Lulan's expression was heavy as water as he walked over and questioned. He usually called Fang Yuan, Brother Shanyin, to show his closeness. But now, he directly called him Wolf King, which meant he was very angry. But no matter how angry he was, why would Fang Yuan be afraid of him? Immediately, Fang Yuan looked at him without fear, his killing intent dissipating as he sneered, "Tribe leader He Lulan, you came at the right time. Your subordinate is so insensible, he actually dares to lecture me. So impudent and disrespectful, I taught him a lesson for you. Don't thank me, what kind of friendship do we have?" Putting the blame on him, impudent, disrespectful, these 2 labels were directly thrown over. The last sentence, "what kind of friendship do we have," was even more profound. It seemed like he was saying that they had a deep friendship, but at the same time, it seemed like he was saying that they did not have any bullshit friendship. He Lulan stared angrily at him. This Chang Shanyin is really too arrogant. He actually dares to hit my people. Look at your lawless attitude, you really think I can't deal with you just because you have the highest battle strength? Black Tyrant roared in his heart. On the surface, he was a dark path cultivator, but because of the great strength true martial physique, he cultivated the strength path. His battle strength was strong, but he could not casually use strength path methods, because it would accelerate the calamity of the 10 extreme physiques. I'll endure it. Right now is the crucial moment of attacking the flying bear phantom. If I have an internal conflict now, all my previous efforts will be wasted. The most important thing for me now is to find a strength path immortal goo and advance to immortal. As long as they successfully killed the flying bear phantom, He Lulan would be able to pass through this floor, and the owner token in his hand would immediately become a one-edge owner token. With the one-edge owner token, he could check the rewards of any round in every floor. If he knew which floor rewarded a strength path immortal goo, he would have a target to attack in the future. Thus, killing the flying bear phantom was an extremely important matter. Even with He Lulan's violent temper, he had to endure it. Today, I will let you be arrogant for once. Sooner or later, I will make you kneel at my feet and lick my toes. When I tell you to shut up, you don't dare to make a sound. When I tell you to bark twice, you start barking like a dog. He Lulan was extremely furious, veins bulged on his forehead as he stared at Fang Yuan with a fierce gaze. Just as everyone was feeling stifled and uneasy because of this tense atmosphere, He Lulan suddenly raised his head and laughed loudly. "Good. Brother Shanyin, you did well. This disrespectful person needs to be taught a lesson." This was like He Lulan taking the initiative to admit defeat. Everyone who was familiar with his temper was shocked. His own people were beaten until they were half dead. He Lulan actually agreed. Wolf King is too domineering, he did not care about a super force like He tribe, now even He Lulan has to admit defeat. Bullshit, this is He Lulan tribe leader looking at the big picture. He is not willing to lower himself to Chang Shanyin's level. Chang Shanyin beat our He tribe people, he will suffer sooner or later. Everyone criticized silently, while some secretly transmitted their voices. Roar. The roar of the flying bear attracted everyone's attention again. The flock of eagles and foxes were being routed. Sirs. This subordinate has failed you. He Qixing's mouth and nose were bleeding, his face full of shame. Tang Miaoming's face was pale and her delicate body swayed. Protect the two lords. Tai Bai Yunsheng shouted. The two of you have worked hard and made great contributions. He had a sincere heart. After this battle, there will be a great reward for you. He Lulan took the initiative to console him. Without any obstruction, the flying bear charged towards them. Logically speaking, it should be a pack of wolves surrounding and attacking. The consumption continued. But when He Lulan glanced at Fang Yuan behind her, she saw Fang Yuan standing proudly with his arms crossed. He did not say a word, but the wolves on the battlefield retreated faster than anyone else. I'll endure it. One day, I will teach you a lesson. He Lulan gritted his teeth, knowing that he could not mobilize Fang Yuan. If he forcefully requested and Fang Yuan rejected him on the spot, he would be embarrassed instead. His reputation would be damaged. Thus, He Lulan shouted, "Move, execute the second step of the plan. Go." Immediately, two figures shot out like lightning. The first figure had a graceful figure, wearing a fluttering blue dress. It was White Fairy Shi Shui. The second figure had a sturdy build, wearing a yellow robe. It was Gu tribe leader Gu Guolong. White Fairy Shi Shui flew in the air, her sleeves fluttered as she shouted, snow started to fall from the sky. It was her signature rank 5 Gu worm, Flying Snow Gu. Gu Guolong was running on the ground, his legs were moving like windmills, everywhere he went, dust and sand flew. It was also a rank 5 Gu, it was called Flying Sand and Moving Rocks. At once, the sky was filled with white snow, while the ground was filled with yellow dust and brown soil. The mountain-like flying bear phantom was in the middle of the snow and dust, its speed fell by several times, and its vision was greatly affected. It roared and waved its paws in the snow and dust, creating fierce air currents that caused the snow and dust to fly even more, blurring one's vision. Seeing this, He Lulan laughed sinisterly, ordering, "Third step." This time, close to 10 figures rushed out. Each of them was a famous expert. There was Bian Si Xian, Hao Ji Lu, Pei Yan Fei, Gao Yang, Zhu Zai, Dou Yi, Nie Qing, Tao Yu, Lu Shuang. These Gu masters were either rank 4 peak stage or rank 5 experts. Together with Gu Guolong and Shi Shui, the lineup was extremely powerful. They entered the snow and dust, attacking the flying bear phantom from all sides. The flying bear roared and showed its berserk nature, retaliating randomly, but the effect was not good. Chapter 590. The sudden change caused everyone's expression to change. What's going on? Where did they go? They actually disappeared. Don't tell me this round has other mysteries. Everyone made guesses and discussed. He Lulan frowned, feeling puzzled. Sun Shirhan's expression was gloomy, as if he thought of something. He said hesitantly, "Is this Battle Space Gu?" Battle Space Gu. At once, everyone's gazes gathered on Sun Shirhan. He Lulan's eyes shined, saying, "This is indeed a space path Gu, but if it is Battle Space Gu, then Elder Hao Ji Lu is in danger. Battle Space Gu has disappeared for so many years, to think it would reappear here." Tai Bai Yunqing sighed, as if he had confirmed it. He had obtained an immortal inheritance from the old beggar, his knowledge was not ordinary. "What is Battle Space Gu?" everyone asked. Yi Lui Sang's gaze was solemn. He was also the current tribe leader of a super force, Yi Lui tribe, but because he lost, he had no choice but to join He tribe. He had a mysterious fire path immortal Gu and was extremely knowledgeable. He explained, "The so-called Battle Space Gu is a rank 5 space path Gu. Once it was activated, it could pull both the enemy and himself into another space. There, both sides will engage in a battle to the death. Only after the victor is decided, or when the time is up, can we leave the space." Sigh, to think that the flying bear had such a Gu worm. He Lulan sighed at the sky, saying in a regretful tone, Everyone's expression turned grim, expressing their worry for Hao Ji Lu. The flying bear phantom was so strong. Even with everyone's strength, they could not kill it. Just Hao Ji Lu alone. How could he be its match? The result of this battle, anyone could easily guess. The flying bear would win and Hao Ji Lu would lose. Although Hao Ji Lu had water image goo and other escape methods, Yi Lui Sang had already said that the space created by the battle space goo would only close when the victor was decided between the enemy and himself. Hao Ji Lu had used all his escape methods, but he would be caught by the flying bear phantom sooner or later. Kill. Unless he had a space path goo worm to counter it. But Hao Ji Lu was a water path goo master, everyone knew this. Even the experts present did not have a space path, thus they were helpless against battle space goo. Perhaps there is still hope. Patriarch Yelu had just said, decide the winner, or wait for the time to run out. What does this end of time mean? Tang Miaoming asked. Yi Lui Sang let out a long sigh. AI, this time is over. It was directed at the goo master. To maintain the battle space goo, primeval essence needed to be consumed continuously. If a goo master keeps using it, when their primeval essence is exhausted, the battle space will naturally disappear. This time, everyone completely lost hope. The flying bear phantom's battle space goo was a wild goo. Wild goo absorbed the primeval chi in the air, but the primeval chi here was endless. It was impossible to count on the end of time. If we could completely absorb the vitality in the air, wouldn't that be possible? Bian Si Xian put forward a very good idea, which made everyone's eyes light up. But it was useless. Everyone discussed for a moment and found that they had to deal with the invisible and intangible primordial chi. He had to use chi path methods. However, Chi path was an ancient path. It had once flourished for a time, but was later replaced by strength path. By now, strength path was already so weak, not to mention chi path. Chi path could be said to have gone extinct long ago. It was very rare to see a chi path goo master. Tai Bai Yunsheng had roamed northern plains for so many years, but he had only seen 3 chi path goo masters. Among them, the closest one was also the strongest. It was one of Lu Wenwu's sworn brothers, variant human Mo Shi Kuang. But this person had already followed Lu Wenwu and pledged allegiance to Lu tribe. How could he work under He Lulan? Even if he could help, he was a goo master who specialized in attacking. He might not have the ability to deal with primeval chi. Even if he had the ability, outsiders could not enter Imperial Court Blessed Land now. Even without chi path, it is important. The crucial thing is to cut off the connection between primeval chi and battle space goo. It is not necessary to empty the primeval chi here. Tai Bai Yunsheng stroked his beard and said. But no one could do anything about this. Cutting off the connection between primeval chi and wild goo was the specialty of restriction path. Restriction path was also an unorthodox path. There were very few restriction path goo masters. None of the people here were restriction path goo masters. Sigh, I passed the high-grade round earlier. In the treasure room of 88-point Jinyang Tower, I found the restriction path goo worm break element goo. It can be used here. Unfortunately, how could I have thought of this? I changed it for something else. Lu Shuang patted her thigh, feeling very regretful. Fang Yuan crossed his arms, standing at the side expressionlessly, not speaking. Think of a way, there must be a way. He Lulan had just said that when the air shook, the huge figure of the flying bear phantom appeared. It opened its mouth and roared, showing its arrogance. Everyone's heart sank, quickly looking for Hao Ji Lu's traces. They wanted to see him alive or dead, but there was no corpse of Hao Ji Lu. Quickly look at the corner of the flying bear's mouth. Sun Shirhan was an investigative goo master. He was the first to find some clues. Everyone followed the voice and saw there was blood on the corner of the flying bear's mouth. When it roared, there was a piece of cloth between its sharp teeth. This cloth looked familiar. Everyone quickly connected the dots. Wasn't this what Hao Ji Lu was wearing? They realized at once. Hao Ji Lu was chewed and eaten by the flying bear. The pitiful Hao Ji Lu, a famous demonic path expert, known as Water Demon, he had shown in the imperial court contest, but died here. Fate was unpredictable, reality was cruel, everyone could not help but feel a sense of sadness. Tai Bai Yunsheng was also helpless now. Although he had man as before Gu, he needed a target to use it on. Right now, Hao Ji Lu's corpse was chewed into pieces by the flying bear and swallowed. How could he save him? The morale of the Gu masters fell. The flying bear phantom is too fierce, how can we fight it? The battle space is small. The flying bear had 5 elements: bear skin Gu, wind tiger cloud dragon Gu, star river Gu, grand chaotic dance Gu, and 5 elements bear skin Gu. If it was one-on-one, who could be its match? Who would have thought that the final hurdle would be so difficult? The rounds of 88-point Jinyang Tower got harder as they progressed. The final round, the 100th round, was the most difficult. Right now, 88-point Jinyang Tower had already condensed over 10 floors. The Gu masters were working hard to get through the rounds, but most of them were stuck at the final 90th round. This final round was the first time the Gu masters had tried it. Damn it. Morale is at rock bottom, it is hard to fight anymore, are we going to return in failure? Hei Lolan's expression was ashen. This time, he made a big fuss and lost an expert, but in the end, he got nothing. This was a huge blow to his reputation. Not only that, Hei Lulan wanted a strength path immortal Gu. He wanted a corner owner token. If he could not get through this floor, he would only have an ordinary corner owner token. If he gave up on this floor and chose another one, he would waste a lot of time. Time waits for no man, Hei Lulan could not wait. Just as the morale of the troops was wavering, Fang Yuan had a calm expression. He spoke slowly, how hard is it to kill a flying bear? These words caused dozens of gazes to shift towards him. But soon, these gazes lowered. The Wolf King was not the Wolf King of the past. The previous Wolf King Chang Shan-in was a famous hero of Northern Plains, a legend of exterminating Ha-Tu Gu's bandits alone. The current Wolf King. He was a flying master and enslavement path master, the publicly recognized #1 general of this imperial court contest. During the decisive battle, he easily defeated the enemy's general in the midst of thousands of troops, turning the tides. He had a proud and aloof nature, even ruthless and cruel, attacking whenever he wanted to. Hei Xiu-yi, who was almost killed by him, was a good example. Looking further back, there was another example. It was Sun Shihan. He had once been publicly slapped by Chang Shan-in, his entire face was stepped on in front of everyone. His dignity and face were all thrown away. Only Hei Lolan's gaze was fixed on him. Only Black Tyrant was not afraid of the ruthless and aloof Chang Shan-in who acted without restraint. Brother Shan-in, I am willing to listen to your brilliant plan. Hei Lulan cupped his fists. Fang Yuan laughed lightly, it is not a brilliant plan, it is not worth mentioning. He paused for a moment before continuing, this battle space Gu might be mystical, but it is only a rank 5 Gu, it has a limited range. In my opinion, we only need to fight from afar and avoid the battle space Gu's attack range. Hei Lulan was dazed, this was like a wake-up call. Everyone's eyes shined, someone patted his head and said excitedly, I was scared by the battle space Gu's reputation. Indeed, as long as it was a Gu worm, it would have a range of effect. The battle space Gu's range should not be wide. Otherwise, why would the battle space Gu only activate after Hao Ji Lu got close? Of course, battle space Gu was a wild Gu, its range needed to be measured further. Next, I will control the wolf group to surround the flying bear. You guys stay at the periphery and fight from afar. Fang Yuan commanded. Hei Lulan was overjoyed, he could not command Fang Yuan, but now that Fang Yuan took the initiative to join the battle, he quickly said, let's follow Wolf King's plan. The battle started again. The wolf group was inside, surrounding the flying bear. And the goo masters were at the periphery, attacking from afar like raindrops. This way, it formed a situation like ants devouring an elephant. The flying bear roared unceasingly, activating Star River goo, Wind Tiger Cloud Dragon goo, Grand Chaotic Dance goo and so on, causing the wolf group to suffer heavy casualties. As for the goo masters, they were safe and sound, there were no more casualties. He Lulan was initially worried that Fang Yuan would retreat due to the huge casualties of the wolf group. But Fang Yuan was unyielding, not retreating even to the death, and even turning a blind eye to the wolf corpses on the ground. He Lulan was naturally puzzled, but after thinking about it, he attributed Fang Yuan's refusal to retreat to his previous promise: once they pass, Wolf King would get 50% of the reward. But he did not know that Fang Yuan was truly concerned about the owner token in He Lulan's hands. He Lulan wanted to raise the owner token in his hands. This was exactly what Fang Yuan wanted. When his owner token reaches 4 edges, Fang Yuan would snatch it and form a 10 edges owner token, obtaining a giant Sun True inheritance. Because of Fang Yuan's actions, the scales of victory gradually tilted towards the goo master's side. The flying bear's injuries became more and more severe, blood flowed out like a waterfall. Howl! Suddenly, the flying bear roared again and spat out a transparent bubble. Rank 5 Battle Space Goo was activated again. The goo masters were already prepared and quickly retreated, but the transparent bubble was only aimed at one blood forest wolf. Whoosh! With a soft sound, the flying bear and blood forest wolf disappeared. What's the use of using the same trick again? Someone saw this and laughed loudly. As long as we don't get close to it, why would we be afraid of the battle space goo? Ha ha ha! All of you shut up! He Lulan shouted angrily, but his expression was one of annoyance. Chapter 591. This time, the duration of the battle space goo was much longer than before. After half a day, the battle space goo disappeared, and the mountain-like flying bear phantom appeared in front of everyone again. Oh no, it was like we guessed. Sun Shirhan cried out. Humph. He Lulan's expression was extremely ugly. The flying bear phantom had no injuries on its body, its snow-white fur was flowing with a dazzling light. Its gaze was spirited, its battle intent high, but it seemed to have recovered completely. There was a rank 5 healing goo on the flying bear, this was already clear information. As for its opponent, the blood forest wolf that was pulled into the battle space, only a pile of white bones remained. How can we fight this? Even the fierce General Pei Yan Fei, whose battle intent was like a raging fire, was at a loss. At the side, Tai Bai Yunsheng stroked his beard, muttering, no matter how serious the flying bear phantom's injuries are, as long as we activate the battle space goo and pull it into the battle space, it will recover to its original state after resting for half a day. During this period of time, we can only watch. That's right, although the battle space goo is a wild goo and is not controlled by the flying bear, it is very sensitive to danger. But wild goo is very sensitive to danger. When it senses danger, to protect its host, it will randomly choose a target and pull them into battle space. Doesn't this mean we can't use the wolf group? The wolf group is close combat. If they surround the flying bear, isn't this the best target to pull into the battle space? It seems we goo masters have to do it ourselves. Someone said this, and the entire place quietened down. Pulling back the wolf group and letting the goo masters attack. That might not work. The flying bear was extremely fast, pulling the goo master into the battle space. The goo master would struggle intensely. Struggling at death's door, trying to find a way to survive. To break the battle space goo and prevent the flying bear from having time to heal itself, there was a simple method, that was to make the goo master who was trapped in the battle space commit suicide. But nobody would want to commit suicide, it was human nature to survive. Even Tai Bai Yunsheng could not save them. Water demon Hao Ji Lu was a bloody example, it was right in front of them. This is the final hurdle. It is too difficult. Our batch is full of talents and heroes, yet we can't do anything to this flying bear virtual image even with our combined strength. The flying bear quietly lay on the ground, vigilantly watching everyone. For the time being, it didn't attack and only let out a low growl. You can't say that either. The crucial point was that the battle space goo could not be restrained. We don't have restriction path, chi path and other methods. Hey family patriarch, I suggest we change the strategy. Yi Luisang was also a patriarch of a super force. Others didn't dare to advise him, but he could. Hey Lulan snorted coldly and did not reply. His thoughts raced like lightning. The current situation. It was almost impossible to solve the problem of the battle space goo. It seemed like there was only one way, and that was for me to take the initiative and have the flying bear pull me into the battle void. In the air, I used strength path killer moves. Kill the flying bear. His strength path killer move was not to be underestimated. Its power was vast and mighty, it was He tribe's secret technique. He Lolan's dark Dao cultivation was not enough to deal with the flying bear. But if he used his strength path methods, along with the amplification of his great strength true martial physique, killing the flying bear would not be difficult. But this way, he would have to break the concealment effect of dark limit immortal goo and hasten the arrival of the 10 extreme calamities. I did not have enough time to begin with. If I use my strength path killer move now and kill the flying bear, the time will be even shorter. I still need to attack the next floor in such a short time and get through 100 rounds to obtain the strength path immortal goo. The difficulty of this is too high. But if I don't get through this round, without the one-edge owner token, how can I know the location of the strength path immortal goo? Whether I change the strategy of the next floor or ask for reinforcements from the tribe, I need time. The worst situation is that even if I use my strength path killer move to kill this flying bear and obtain the one-edge owner token, this 88-point Jinyang Tower might not have any strength path immortal goo. He Lulan was hesitant. This was a matter of life and death, and the path ahead was dark, he was at a loss. It is not difficult to break the battle space goo. His words were shocking. Everyone looked towards the source of the voice, it was none other than Wolf King. Brother Shan-in, you have another brilliant plan? He Lulan quickly asked. Fang Yuan chuckled, for the matter of the 50% reward, I have to do my best, right? This plan has 3 steps. First, we will fight from afar and exhaust the flying bear. Second, we will send death warriors to engage in close combat. Once they are dragged into the battle space, they will immediately commit suicide. Third, the flying bear will not have any time to rest, we will continue to fight from afar and persevere, we will definitely be able to kill this beast. Brilliant plan. Why didn't I think of it? Immediately, someone shouted, some slapped their thighs in joy, while some sighed inwardly at the ruthlessness of this plan. But no matter what, everyone knew this was a way to solve the problem. In northern plains where wars were frequent, every tribe had death warriors, it was just that there were more or less of them, elites or not. He tribe was a super force, not only did they nurture many death warriors, they were all elites. This way. Tai Bai Yunsheng frowned slightly, he could not bear to do this. Sun Shirhan's eyes flashed with sharp light, he only looked at He Lulan, not saying a word. Dying on the battlefield and sending oneself to die were 2 completely different concepts. The former was the glory of a warrior, the latter was a person in power harming the lives of others for their own benefit. If this was really done, He Lulan's reputation as the leader of He tribe would be ruined. This went against the values of the righteous path. The most important thing to do in the righteous path was to have a good reputation. If one's reputation was bad, their achievements in the righteous path would be limited. Demonic path was different, regardless of reputation, the most important thing was strength. Thus, in the complex demonic path, there was Hao Ji Lu who brought disaster, and also Tai Bai Yunsheng who saved the dying and healed the injured. Because of this, Sun Shirhan did not persuade him. He was an astute person, he knew that no matter what he said, it would not be appropriate. He had already thought of this method, but he did not suggest it. He did not dare. Right now, Sun Shirhan had already become an external elder of He tribe. Once he suggested it, his reputation would be ruined. Would he still be able to stay in He tribe? I'm afraid only the vicious and cruel Wolf King can say it without any scruples. Sun Shirhan sneaked a glance at Fang Yuan. He was filled with hatred and fear, his face was still aching. But what Sun Shirhan did not know was, to He Lulan, his life was about to be forfeit. What use was reputation? When He Lulan heard Fang Yuan's suggestion, he immediately decided to adopt it. But he still frowned and thought for a long time, hesitating and sighing. He played out his benevolent side to the fullest. Finally, he heaved a long sigh and spouted a bunch of genteel words without stopping. The gist of it was, he had no choice but to adopt this method. The dead tribesmen, he would bury them as his brothers. Their relatives, he would take care of them personally. Everyone knew this, but did not point it out. This was the rule of the righteous path. After going through this process, He Lulan immediately gave the order. He summoned He tribe's death warriors. These He tribe death warriors had rank 2 cultivation level, they had been nurtured by He tribe since young, instilled in them day and night, they were extremely loyal. As for rank 3 death warriors, they were not non-existent. But normally, when they reached rank 3, then they would be very valuable, almost all of them would leave their status as death warriors. But among the super forces, there were a few death warriors with rank 3 or even rank 4 cultivation level. They would not be used easily. He Lulan was the current leader of He tribe, to let these death warriors die. They would not say anything. If the ruler wanted his subjects to die, the subjects had to die, even if they did not want to die, they had to die. This was the system. There were no more surprises in the following battles. After a dozen or so death warriors died, the flying bear virtual image fell to the ground, on the verge of death. Just as everyone wanted to deal a fatal blow, they suddenly found they could not move. How can this be? It is the power of 88-point Jinyang Tower, we are unable to move. This is too shameless, we were so close to killing this flying bear. Everyone shouted and shouted, dumbfounded. Only Fang Yuan had a calm expression, he hid the 6-edge owner token, he knew that this round had been cleared. He Lulan also sensed it, he quickly took out the owner token and stared at it, only to see a corner slowly growing out of the originally round owner token. At the same time, the feeling of fortune was transmitted to his heart, letting him know that he had completely controlled this floor. So this final round does not require us to kill the flying bear, we only need to beat it until it is on the verge of death. He Lulan was overjoyed inwardly, but he showed a sorrowful expression, he sighed, everyone, don't be impatient, the battle is over, the mission is complete, this round has been cleared. Sigh, it is a pity for my He tribe's good men. If not for the battle space isolating the inside from the outside, I would have used puppets or wild beasts to replace them. Cleared, cleared. Everyone was surprised and happy. He Lulan tribe leader, I wonder what the reward for this round is. Can you let me broaden my horizons? Tai Bai Yunsheng asked. His goal in clearing 88-point Jinyang Tower was to find lifespan goo. However, lifespan goo were rare and precious, they could only be used as rewards after passing the 90th round. He Lulan heard this and had a strange expression, he pointed at the dying flying bear phantom, this is the reward for this round. What? It is this flying bear phantom? What's going on? Everyone was shocked, only Fang Yuan knew what was going on. He had the 6-edge owner token, he knew all the rewards of the rounds in 88-point Jinyang Tower like the back of his hand. Before challenging the round, he knew that the reward for this round was a rank 6 Phantom Path Immortal Goo, its name was easy to understand, Flying Bear Phantom Goo. As expected, at the next moment, under everyone's shocked gazes, the dying flying bear gradually turned into a lump of white light the size of a mountain. The white light shrunk and turned into a dot, flying towards He Lulan. He Lulan quickly received it and observed it carefully. He was the owner of the owner token. After passing this round, the reward was his. He had just touched this flying bear phantom goo, but because of the power of 88-point Jinyang Tower, he easily refined it. Fang Yuan's 6-edge owner token was different. It was a product of cheating. Only by controlling a certain floor could he take the floor's reward. Of course, it was not that he could not compete for He Lulan's owner token, but if he did, he would awaken Giant Sun's will, the losses would outweigh the gains and he would die a terrible death. This risk could not be taken, it was best not to. Flying Bear Phantom Goo was dispirited and on the verge of death, its aura was weak and its condition was not good. But He Lulan's gaze was fixed on it. What was this? This is an immortal goo. He had just sighed inwardly, when he heard someone speak, "This immortal goo, give it to me." The tone was plain, but there was an unquestionable determination. He Lulan frowned, he did not need to turn around to know who this person was. Chapter 592. When Fang Yuan publicly asked for Flying Bear Phantom Goo, He Lulan's first reaction was to reject it. This was an immortal goo. Even ordinary goo immortals could not obtain one even if they begged for it. No matter how powerful the Wolf King was, he was only a mortal, he dared to make such an excessive request. Moreover, this Flying Bear Phantom Goo was very convenient to use. With just a thought and a casual toss, the goo worm could instantly turn into a Flying Bear Phantom and fight. The battle strength of the Flying Bear Phantom, although not as terrifying as the true desolate beast Flying Bear, was absolutely at half immortal battle strength. With one could look down on the mortal world. If He Lulan had such an immortal goo during the Imperial Court contest, how could it be Fang Yuan's turn to perform? Fang Yuan was openly asking for it, it was extremely rude. But He Lulan was furious, but also felt that it was reasonable. Perhaps only a person like Chang Shan-yin would have the guts to ask for it in public. Looking at the Flying Bear Phantom Goo in her hands, He Lulan gradually calmed down. Not good. The Flying Bear Phantom was almost killed by us, this immortal goo's condition is extremely bad, it cannot be used again, it needs to rest for a period of time. An immortal goo is injured, it needs to be healed. Other than that, I can only let it recover on its own. During this period, it needs to be fed, it cannot be interrupted. If I remember correctly, this Flying Bear Phantom Goo's food is the desolate beast Flying Bear's flesh and blood. This is difficult. How can I have such a thing? I can only ask for help from the tribe. The more He Lulan thought, the less anger he felt. He had one of the 10 extreme physiques, great strength true martial physique, he needed a strength path immortal goo to advance to goo immortal and escape from the threat of death. Flying Bear Phantom Goo was not what he needed, what he truly desired was a strength path immortal goo. My urgent matter now is to find a strength path immortal goo. Immortal goo are usually only at the final round of a certain layer, I need to rely on everyone's strength to pass the round. Even though He Lulan was not afraid of Chang Shan-yin. But if he forcefully held on to Flying Bear Phantom Goo, he would definitely fall out with the Wolf King and become estranged, making it even harder for him to mobilize the Wolf King's strength. Instead, she might as well give this immortal goo to him in exchange for his strength, to truly help He Lulan. In this way, he could also take care of He Lulan's reputation so that others wouldn't say that he didn't keep his word. He Lulan had only thought about it for a moment. Humph. Sun Shirhan sneered, Wolf Wangda's man, this is an immortal goo, you want to take it away with just one sentence? Previously, my patriarch promised you 50% of the reward. But that does not mean we have to give you the immortal goo. Looks like the lesson I gave you last time wasn't enough. Hearing this, Fang Yuan's eyebrows twitched. His eyes were cold and his killing intent was not concealed at all as he rushed towards Sun Shirhan. Sun Shirhan's expression changed. He could not help but move a few steps closer to He Lulan. No one doubted him. Whether Fang Yuan had the guts to kill him. The Wolf King's ferocious might was deeply ingrained in everyone's hearts. Ha ha ha. He Lulan raised his head and laughed, taking a step towards Fang Yuan and patting his chest. A man's words carry enormous weight. Earlier, we promised Wolf King 50%, so it is 50%. Pass this round. We are also relying on Brother Shan Yin's brilliant plan. Thus, another 10% is not too much to ask. But immortal goo are unique, their value is immeasurable. You can take 60% at most. As for the remaining 40%, how are you going to compensate us? That's right, we also put in a lot of effort. Even though I was heavily injured, I did not retreat. Everyone saw it. Lord Water Demon Hao Ji Lu even died because of it. I believe Wolf Wang Da's men will definitely give us an explanation. Everyone agreed, targeting Fang Yuan. Even if Fang Yuan had the strength. But wealth moved people's hearts. Seeing that an immortal goo was about to fall into his hands, the surrounding people were envious and jealous, thus they focused all their attention on Fang Yuan. Under everyone's gazes, Fang Yuan's brows furrowed deeper and deeper, until they shrunk into a knot. He Lulan laughed inwardly. Wolf King, oh Wolf King, no matter how fierce you are and how strong you are, you have fallen into my trap. 7 days later. 88 Point Jinyang Tower, 7th floor, 90th round. In the maze, the flying bear phantom roared at the sky. Its body was covered in injuries, blood was flowing out of its mouth, several of its sharp teeth were broken, its right eye was completely blind, its large eyeball was hanging out of its socket like a grape, it was in a sorry state. And it only had one enemy. He was floating in the air, with 6 arms on his back. Compared to the flying bear phantom's mountain-like body, he was extremely tiny. But the flying bear phantom looked like it was facing a great enemy, it was even trying to put up a strong front. Both sides had fought for more than 15 minutes, it deeply felt the strength of this tiny existence in front of it. Flying bear phantom goo, as expected of an immortal goo. The flying bear phantom that is formed has quite a bit of intelligence, it is almost crafty. When I face strong enemies in the future, I can let it attack freely, it will save me a lot of mental energy. Fang Yuan looked at the flying bear phantom below him, evaluating in his mind. 7 days ago, He Lulan gathered many experts and passed the final round of the 5th floor, obtaining flying bear phantom immortal goo. Fang Yuan did not stand on ceremony, asking for it on the spot. The other goo masters were jealous and tried to stop him, but Fang Yuan expressed that he was willing to pay the other half of the price, his attitude was firm. Eventually, He Lulan gave this goo to Fang Yuan. With this goo, Fang Yuan found He Lulan that night and asked for a loan, forming an agreement behind her back. After returning, he used her immortal blessed land to communicate with jewel yellow skies, exchanging for the corresponding goo worms and food, and on the 6th day, he recovered flying bear phantom goo to a healthy state. On the 7th day, Fang Yuan secretly entered the 7th floor of 88 Point Jinyang Tower to personally test flying bear phantom goo, as well as the perfected killer move 6-arm heavenly zombie king. Fang Yuan ordered flying bear phantom goo to attack him without holding back, while he himself used the killer move 6-arm heavenly zombie king to fight. Flying bear phantom goo was an immortal goo, it had half the battle strength of flying bear. But it was not Fang Yuan's match in 6-arm heavenly zombie state. Fang Yuan was quite satisfied with this result. He thought about it for a long time. 6-arm heavenly zombie king, this killer move, is truly amazing. It uses borrow strength goo as the core, it can borrow the power of heaven, earth, water, fire, and all sorts of natural forces to strengthen itself, allowing the strength to flow endlessly. Even more amazing is that it can temporarily turn me into a zombie body. This way, my body will be in a half-dead state, my recovery speed will rise greatly, and I will be able to get rid of pain, as if I have limitless strength and am omnipotent. If it was a living body, continuously exerting strength would result in a lack of strength. But now that Fang Yuan had turned into a heavenly zombie, he cleverly avoided this drawback. This strength, this feeling, made Fang Yuan intoxicated. At the same time, it made him even more vigilant. I can only maintain this state for a short while. But during intense battles, I often immerse myself completely, forgetting the passage of time. Such a killer move gives me a good feeling and makes me easily intoxicated. I must not forget the killer move's time limit, otherwise the consequences will be severe. 6-Arm Heavenly Zombie King was a powerful killer move, but it had a time limit. If the time limit was exceeded, using it for a long time could cause the Gu Master to completely turn into a heavenly zombie. The severity was even higher than the 10 extreme calamities. Even if he used Yin-Yang rotation Gu, he would not be able to recover. Fang Yuan wanted to resolve this flaw, but Mo Yao's standards were too harsh. It was hard to find a suitable person to test the Gu in a short time. Actually, you have not fully displayed the power of this flying bear phantom Gu. At this time, Mo Yao's will in Fang Yuan's mind suddenly spoke. Oh, what do you mean? Mo Yao seemed to have some understanding of Phantom Path. Phantom Path focuses on the coexistence of phantom and reality. From rank 1 to rank 5, Phantom is the main focus, turning into Phantom to avoid attacks. Thus, Phantom Path Gu Masters often lack offense and have plenty of defense. But after rank 6, Phantom Path Gu Immortals have both offense and defense, turning Phantom and reality into reality. When defending, they turn into Phantom, causing all attacks to fail. When attacking, they turn Phantom into reality, making it hard to defend against. And Flying Bear Phantom Gu is a Phantom Path Immortal Gu. Killing desolate beast flying bears, taking their skin, blood, bones, and soul to refine. A single Flying Bear Phantom Gu would only have half the battle strength of a true flying bear. But if it is equipped with other Gu worms, like the previous Battle Space Gu, Grand Chaotic Dance Gu, 5 Elements Bear Skin Gu, and so on, its battle strength would rise greatly. Mo Yao's words made Fang Yuan nod repeatedly. He recalled the scene when he challenged the round. It was because of the Gu worms on the Flying Bear Phantom's body that its battle strength rose sharply, to the point where everyone was helpless against it. But after the battle space Gu was taken by He Lulan. The other Gu worms were also divided among the others. When Fang Yuan fought with the Flying Bear Phantom alone, the Flying Bear Phantom no longer had any Gu worms on it. This allowed Fang Yuan to gain the upper hand in the battle. He could not help but have some understanding. From another perspective, using Flying Bear Phantom Gu with other Gu worms, isn't it just using many Gu together? Isn't this a killer move? Killer moves were the Gu Master's ingenuity, using many Gu worms and using them together to form the best effect of 1 + 1 is greater than 2. Mo Yao nodded. You comprehended it well, that is indeed the case. However, only Phantom Path Gu can truly be used with Flying Bear Phantom Gu. Not to mention others, just one Gu can allow Flying Bear Phantom Gu to turn from solid to Phantom, dodging all attacks. Make Phantom Gu. Fang Yuan's heart could not help but tremble. He could imagine how troublesome the Flying Bear Phantom with the help of the Qi Gu would be. This would allow Flying Bear Phantom Gu's usage to undergo a qualitative change. Mo Yao smiled lightly, saying, Lad, as long as you obediently return Water Pavilion to Spirit Affinity House, I will tell you about the 3 Phantom Path inheritances. One of them might even be a Phantom Path Gu Immortal inheritance. We'll see. Fang Yuan calmed down, his tone indifferent. His wariness towards Mo Yao's will had never disappeared. Chapter 593. Time passed quickly. Another month had passed in the blink of an eye. Northern Plains. Fierce winds howled and snow fluttered. The world was a vast expanse of whiteness. Pure white snow covered 10,000 li of grassland. Bone-chilling winds engulfed the world. Sometimes it formed tornadoes, sometimes it lifted the deep snow on the ground. The 10-year blizzard disaster wreaked havoc on the whole of Northern Plains. Living beings lamented, all living beings withered. In a limited area, the surviving humans and animals struggled at death's door. Not only did they have to overcome the cold, they also had to fight against snow monsters and others. Under such a harsh environment, the snowmen were like fish in water, moving about frequently and becoming very active. The icy blizzard was like a warm spring breeze to the snowmen. They hunted in the blizzard. Large numbers of wild snow path, ice path, and water path goo worms were living on their bodies. During normal times, the snowman tribes that were hunted, suppressed, and sold by goo masters had developed greatly, their forces expanding rapidly. Amidst the howling blizzard, 2 black shadows flashed. The shadows stood on the cliff, overflowing with immortal aura. They were He tribe's 2 goo immortals, He Bai and He Cheng. They looked down at the valley below them from high above. The blizzard was still violent, but it could not sway the two's clothes in the slightest. The falling snow could not obstruct the two's probing gazes. In the valley, ice houses had already been built. There were tens of thousands of them. A group of valiant snowman warriors had just returned from hunting. They had returned from a rewarding journey and were entering the valley. Rank 6 Wood Path Goo Immortal Heibai frowned. These snowmen are taking the chance to develop. In these 3 days, this is the 7th time we have seen a tribe of such scale. Those who are not of our race have different intentions. Although snowmen have the word human, they are variant humans. After the blizzard ends, Northern Plains humans will actively develop and will definitely have many battles with these snowmen. The more snowmen there are to humans, the more enemies they have, the stronger they are. He Cheng patted He Bai's shoulder, smiling. Brother should be happy. Looking at it from another angle, these snowmen are our wealth. If we capture these snowmen, we can not only exchange them for immortal yuan stones from other goo immortals. We can also teach Shui Song Zi a lesson. The corners of He Bai's mouth curled up into a smile. Elder brother is thoughtful. If not for Shui Song Zi, I would have gotten wooden chicken goo long ago. He had actually interfered in the battle for the imperial court. Over the past few days, we have been hunting snowmen and selling them to jewel yellow skies. I really want to see Shui Song Zi's expression right now. After saying this, the smile at the corner of He Bai's mouth immediately disappeared, his eyes revealing a hint of anxiety. Elder brother, He Lulan has already been in imperial court for so long. According to the calculation of the time, 88-point Jinyang Tower should have already formed more than 20 floors. Why haven't I seen the wooden chicken goo? He Cheng laughed. Calm down, calm down. The 88-point Jinyang Tower had a total of 88 floors. How many floors were there? He Lulan, that child. Although he was short-tempered, he was cautious when it came to important matters. Ever since he entered imperial court, he has never lost contact with us, right? Moreover, He Lulan already has a one-edge owner token. As long as the wooden chicken goo is taken, before it forms a floor, He Lulan will sense it. We will be able to receive the information. He tribe was a super force. Although they did not have talent, they could match Fairy Mo Yao's level. But using goo worms to send messages inside and outside, they still had their own ways. Imperial Court Blessed Land originally did not allow internal and external communication, but after so many years, even Giant Sun Immortals arrangements could not withstand the erosion of the River of Time, and there were loopholes in it. Although they did not have Fairy Mo Yao's talent, He tribe, Lu tribe and other super forces also had their own methods of internal and external communication. Once a goo master advances to an immortal, their entire life will be elevated, and they will possess immortal essence. Mortals are simply not an immortal's match to deal with a goo immortal. And it has to be a goo immortal. Strength path immortal goo, He Lulan softly muttered, slowly getting up and leaving her seat, walking towards the window. He looked up. The peak of the sacred palace was filled with dazzling colors. The newest floor of 88-point Jinyang Tower was about to form at this moment. 38th floor. He Lulan sighed inwardly. He had seen this situation many times, and was no longer as excited as the first time. But his reverence towards ancestor giant Sun was accumulated every time True Yang Tower was formed, and now, he was completely in awe of his ancestors' heaven-defying methods. Only by relying on 88-point Jinyang Tower and borrowing ancestor giant Sun's strength can I take revenge. He Lulan took out his owner token. Although so much time had passed, his owner token was still a one-edge owner token. He Lulan was well versed in history, and was well aware of his own strength. This time's lineup was not bad compared to the previous victors of the Imperial Court contest, but it was not too good either. At most, he could only pass 3 or 4 times. He Lulan wanted to obtain his own strength path Immortal Gu, and also had the clan mission of plundering Wooden Chicken Immortal Gu. This meant that the quota for 2 passes had already been reserved long ago. Thus, these days, he had restrained himself and focused on recuperating. At the same time, he still opened up 88-point Jinyang Tower, allowing Gu masters to increase their strength as much as possible. By doing this, he naturally gained the gratitude and reverence of the Gu masters outside of He tribe. Of course, He tribe had many dissatisfaction and puzzlement. But because of Black Tyrant's fierce reputation, He tribe members could only feel angry, but did not dare to say anything. Come. He Lulan lightly called. His trusted aide He Shu immediately appeared in front of him, quietly kneeling on the ground and lowering his head. Lord Tribe Leader, please instruct me. How is the situation recently? He Lulan caressed the owner token in his hand, looking far away. His gaze was still on 88-point Jinyang Tower. The situation seems stable recently, but there are turbulent undercurrents. Chang tribe's Gu masters have been assassinated, and many Gu masters have mysteriously disappeared when they went out. Chang tribe leader Chang Jiyu personally went out. They searched everywhere, trying to capture the culprit, but found nothing. Instead, the situation of Chang tribe's Gu masters being harmed has become more serious. He Shu reported. Oh, who is so daring? He Shu showed an ashamed expression. This subordinate is still investigating. He Lulan slightly nodded, saying with a tone of schadenfreude, don't be anxious, we should not be anxious about this. Chang Shan Yin's way of doing things is too sinister and ruthless, he has lost the harmony of the people, and now he is tasting the bitter fruit. Several months ago, when he swept through the Earth Chief Beast Group, he sent Chang tribe's Gu masters to capture many Gu masters, but he actually killed them all. This caused a lot of anger among the people, but because of Wolf King's fierce reputation, although they wanted revenge, they did not dare to move. Right now, He Lulan remembered it clearly. Because among these unlucky Gu masters that Fang Yuan used as test subjects, there was someone who was related to He Lulan. Wolf King actually did not give her face and killed this person, this made He Lulan secretly bear a grudge. Tribe leader is wise, this subordinate also thinks so. He Shu flattered and added, Chang tribe leader might be Chang Jiyu, but this person is Wolf King's son and was appointed as tribe leader by Wolf King with one sentence. He is too young and cannot convince the people. The whole of Chang tribe's affairs are actually in the hands of Chang Jiyu's foster father, the former Chang tribe leader Chang Biao. But not long ago, the news of Lord Chang Biao and Lord Pan Ping dying in the 90th round of the 7th floor spread. Chang tribe was in turmoil, and Chang Jiyu could not maintain the situation in Chang tribe. The Avengers saw this opportunity, and maybe because of the True Yang building's reward, their strength rose greatly, so they went around to assassinate Chang tribe's Gu masters. Yes. He Lulan nodded. He Shu's analysis was also his opinion on this matter. Quickly investigate this person, to be able to disregard Wolf King's fierce reputation and focus on revenge, this is bravery. These days, to assassinate Chang tribe's Gu masters without being discovered, this is a scheme. This person is brave and astute, he should be recruited into our He tribe. Only our He tribe can protect her life. He Lulan instructed. Yes, Lord. Are there any movements on Chang Shan Yin's side? Ever since Chang Biao's corpse was found and returned to Chang tribe, Wolf King might have obtained some clues from Chang Biao's corpse. On that day, he entered Truyang building and has yet to come out. This subordinate sent people to investigate. Wolf King should have gone to the 90th round of the 7th floor's labyrinth. Ever since he entered, the howls of wolf groups could be heard from the labyrinth. He Shu reported. He Lulan frowned. Chang Biao, Pan Ping and Water Demon Hao Ji Lu's death were all situations he did not want to see. But now that they were dead, He Lulan could only accept this reality. He could completely predict that once Wolf King comes out of the building and learns of Chang tribe's misfortune, he would fly into a rage and search for the culprit. At that time, the whole sacred palace would probably be turned upside down. He Lulan could not wait for Wolf King to incite even more anger among the people, but he was worried that Wolf King would implicate the innocent and kill people everywhere, greatly weakening the strength he could mobilize when challenging the rounds. This was something He Lulan had to prevent. But how could he stop it? He Lulan did not speak, falling into deep thought. He Shu quietly knelt on the ground, patiently waiting for He Lulan's next order. He Lulan's thoughts did not last long. A surprised expression suddenly appeared on his face. His gaze instantly sharpened, staring at Truyang building at the peak of the sacred palace. There, the 39th floor was slowly condensing. Although it had yet to take form, through the one-edge owner token, He Lulan could know the goo worms in this floor. Wooden chicken goo. Wooden chicken goo has finally appeared. He Lulan's heart shook, but soon, he calmed down. His gaze was like cold lightning as he turned to look at He Shu. Chapter 594. Not long after, Ma Yingjie heard the summons and hurried over to pay his respects. As He tribe's greatest opponent, Ma tribe had suffered a crushing defeat in the decisive battle. Ma tribe's experts were almost all slaughtered. Young tribe leader Ma Yingjie was luckily saved and bravely took on the heavy responsibility of tribe leader. His original plan was to hole up in Warm Pond Valley and recuperate as much as possible. But He Lulan forced him to come and forcefully annexed Ma tribe. Next, Ma tribe could only follow He tribe to Imperial Court Blessed Land. Ma Yingjie had thought that He Lulan wanted to strip Ma tribe of its name and swallow the whole tribe. For this, he had put in many efforts and even accepted outsiders and gave them the surname Ma. But in the end, none of the things he had predicted happened. Not only that, after Ma tribe came to Imperial Court Blessed Land, they did not receive any harsh criticism from He Lulan. Instead, they were treated equally. He Lulan selflessly opened up 88-point Jinyang Tower. Ma tribe had gained a lot of benefits. Right now, Ma tribe was recovering well and the tribe's forces were growing stronger day by day. However, there was no free lunch in this world. Ma Yingjie had been feeling uneasy because of this. Receiving He Lulan's sudden summons, the uneasiness in his heart increased by several times and reached its peak. Looking at Ma Yingjie, He Lulan smiled. Ma tribe leader, how has Ma tribe been these days? Ma Yingjie was extremely vigilant and immediately replied, we are fine. This is all thanks to tribe leader's magnanimity and disregard of past enmity. Ma tribe has been struggling at death's door and has now recovered some vitality. If I remember correctly, this time, Ma tribe was sponsored by Snowy Mountain Blessed Land's demonic path Gu Immortal Shui Song Zi, right? He Lulan said amiably. Ma Yingjie was tongue-tied and broke out in cold sweat, unable to speak. Ma tribe, as a Huang Jin bloodline, privately communicated with a demonic path Gu Immortal. This was no doubt breaking the rules set by ancestor Giant Sunday. Could it be that He Lulan is here to settle the score? Damn it, now he is the meat on the chopping block, and I want to destroy the Ma family. All I need is one word from He Lulan. Ma Yingjie was very nervous. Revitalizing the Ma family was his lifelong wish. The Ma family was his lifeline. Ha ha ha. He Lulan laughed, her laughter echoing throughout the study. Don't be nervous, Ma family head. As long as you cooperate obediently, glory, splendor, and wealth will come rolling in. Please speak, Patriarch. Ma Yingjie gritted his teeth. A wise man submits to circumstances. Under such circumstances, he had no choice but to bow down. What? However, what He Lulan said next shocked Ma Yingjie. He was as stunned as a statue. Great Snow Mountain, blessed land. The towering snow-capped peak stood tall among them. The sky was blue. Radiance flowed around. The fifth branch peak. Within Ice Lake Palace, a negotiation was nearing its end. Xue Songzi had an anxious expression as he looked at Demon Lord Long Dan in front of him, saying impatiently, Demon Lord, don't forget who lent you the immortal Yuan stone in an emergency. To repay your debt. It was me. Now that I encountered some trouble, I asked you for help, but you are making all sorts of excuses. Isn't this too disappointing? Is the great Demon Lord Long Dan such a petty person? Demon Lord Long Dan smiled as he sipped his tea, saying in a gentle tone, Lord Songzi, please be careful with your words. Ben Jun will always remember our previous friendship in my heart. I have not forgotten it at all. But this time, Lord Songzi, your trouble is not small. If I help you, I will offend He Tribe's Gu immortals. My business in Jewel Yellow Skies has just started to improve, it cannot withstand such a blow. Xue Songzi sold snowmen for a living, he was quite wealthy. The waters of the Imperial Court contest are too deep, it is not something I can step into. Previously, many demonic path Gu immortals had interfered in the Imperial Court contest, but how many of them had a good ending? Sigh, my greed was aroused by wooden chicken Gu. I thought that since I had already offended He Tribe's Gu immortals, I might as well interfere. But I did not know how many demonic path Gu immortals were watching me make a fool of myself. Sigh, it is time to reflect. Xue Songzi sighed repeatedly. Just as he was about to reflect on this painful experience and learn from it, a letter Gu pierced through the air and appeared in front of him. Isn't this the letter Gu I gave to my tribe for communication? Xue Songzi felt it was strange, and held it in his hand. His mind inspected it, and he immediately showed an astonished expression. What does this mean? He Lulan actually wants to cooperate with me. Xue Songzi sneered in disdain, using wooden chicken Gu as bait to deceive me, this might be another scheme of He Tribe. Wait a moment. This is actually, does He Lulan really want to cooperate with me? Interesting, ha 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 ha, interesting. Half a month later, Mother. He Lulan suddenly sat up on the bed. He breathed heavily, his whole body drenched in cold sweat. A long while later, his pupils gradually regained their focus. It was another nightmare. This nightmare had been tormenting him since a long time ago. Each nightmare was like a pile of firewood. It made the fire of hatred in his heart burn even more fiercely. After calming his breathing, He Lulan got up from the bed. His body was swollen like a bear, and his triangular eyes started to shine with an intimidating light. But on his face, there was a deep sense of exhaustion. But when he opened the window, this exhaustion was completely concealed, and people could feel it. Only the aura of a ruthless overlord lingering around his body. He looked up at 88-point Jinyang Tower, and pondered about the matter of cooperating with Xue Songzi. In the letter, he did not hesitate to take a risk, telling Xue Songzi the biggest secret in his heart, and even gave out the crucial Gu worms, using his body as a hostage to exchange for Xue Songzi's trust. Right now. The 39th floor had been condensed for a long time, and his cooperation with Xue Songzi was progressing well. Thanks to this demonic path Gu immortal's help, He Lulan had a smooth journey in the 39th floor. It could be said that he was advancing triumphantly. His actions were equivalent to betraying He Tribe. He Tribe's Gu immortals would definitely not let him off. In fact, He Lulan did not even know how long he could hide this matter. But he was clear that as long as he was in Imperial Court Blessed Land, he was safe. Imperial court blessed land forbade Gu immortals from entering or leaving. At this point, he could no longer turn back, he could only move forward until his death. But the most crucial thing in He Lolan's plan, the strength path immortal Gu that could change the entire situation, had yet to appear. He could only continue to wait. 88 Point Jinyang Tower, 7th floor. 90th round. Chang Ji-yu pays respects to Lord Supreme Elder. Chang tribe leader knelt on the ground with an ashamed expression. Do you know why I summoned you? Fang Yuan stood in front of him, speaking plainly. This subordinate is ashamed, I have failed to live up to Lord Supreme Elder's trust. This subordinate is extremely useless, allowing the murderer to roam freely, Lord Supreme Elder, please punish me. Chang Ji-yu continued to kowtow, his forehead knocking against the ground, producing muffled sounds. Not long after, blood could be seen on his forehead. Fang Yuan snorted coldly, you have some self-awareness, you know your own incompetence. Stop kowtowing, get up and answer me. This subordinate doesn't dare. Get up. Fang Yuan emphasized again, his tone was calm, but it was filled with an unquestionable and irrefutable decision. Chang Ji-yu stood up, his head lowered, blood was slowly flowing down his face, he was in a sorry state. Sigh. Fang Yuan sighed lightly, he stretched out his hand and comforted the wound on Chang Ji-yu's forehead. White light shone, under the power of a healing Gu worm, Chang Ji-yu's wound rapidly healed, not leaving any scars. Chang Ji-yu's body shuddered, 2 streams of hot tears flowed out of his eyes. Ever since the father and son met, this was the first time Chang Shan-yin had made such an intimate action towards his son Chang Ji-yu. Chapter 595. Fang Yuan wiped Chang Ji-yu's tears, his tone gentle like the spring breeze. What are you crying for? You are my Wolf King's son, you can only bleed and not shed tears. The word son made Chang Ji-yu's heart shudder, as if he had received an electric shock. Great joy engulfed Chang Ji-yu's heart like a tsunami. Father finally admitted that I am his son. He called me personally. The grievances he had accumulated in his heart, the pressure he had to bear, the accumulated anger, shame, and grief towards his foster father's death, at this moment, he was greatly relieved. He could not help but shed tears of joy, but Fang Yuan's words were still ringing in his ears. He endured bitterly, his face was distorted and his lips were bleeding from biting, but his tears still flowed out unceasingly. He opened his mouth, wanting to call out, Father, but he did not dare, he could only repeatedly apologize while sobbing, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Fang Yuan lightly patted his shoulder, saying warmly, do you know what your greatest shortcoming is? Chang Ji-yu was slightly dazed. Fang Yuan continued with an affirmative tone, your greatest shortcoming is that you are not strong enough. Not strong enough. Chang Ji-yu stopped sobbing, his teary eyes staring at the imposing figure in front of him. This is yellow gold relic Gu, it is enough for you to climb to rank 4 peak stage. There is also purple crystal relic Gu, it can let you advance by leaps and bounds in rank 5. Fang Yuan took out 2 relic Gu and stuffed them into Chang Ji-yu's hands. Chang Ji-yu received it in a daze, then a surge of gratitude filled his heart. This is a father's love. How many poets have praised a father's love as heavy as a mountain, as deep as the sea? Today, I finally feel it. Father. Chang Ji-yu sobbed emotionally, looking at Fang Yuan, he kneeled down. A young eagle's wings will not become as hard as steel without going through the tempering of wind and frost. A young horse will not be able to gallop like the wind without experiencing a fall. I have already heard the report on Chang tribe's matters, but I will not care. Become strong. Accept this tempering, take over the tribe, and use this to establish your prestige, this is what you need to do. I'll be watching you from behind the scenes, Fang Yuan said. Lord Father, this child is ashamed. Being so attentive to his biological father made Chang Ji-yu excited. This made him feel a sense of fear. Fang Yuan waved his hand. I know your concerns. Was he worried that his aptitude was insufficient and it would be difficult for him to break through to rank 5? Don't worry, not only will I raise your aptitude, I will also teach you a set of strength path killer move. It will be extremely powerful. This is my special skill, even during the final battle of the royal court. I only used 30% of my power. Ah. Chang Ji-yu couldn't help gaping, pleasantly surprised. His father actually had a method to raise his aptitude, and was even going to teach him a strength path killer move. This set of strength path killer moves was what father had used in the decisive battle against Ma tribe. And that was only 30% of its power. Father, you are my biological father after all. Although adoptive father Chang Biao treated me very well, compared to my biological father, it was nothing. This was the deepest bond in the bloodline. Lord Father, he is going to nurture me. He is going to vigorously groom me. After the shock, Chang Ji-yu's heart surged with even greater joy. Next, I will raise your aptitude. Relax your mind and calm your mind. Sleep, sleep, have a good sleep first. Fang Yuan's voice was warm and gentle, while secretly activating a hypnosis goo. Chang Ji-yu's mood had fluctuated greatly, he was already exhausted. Under the effect of the goo worm, Fang Yuan's heart was filled with confidence. Under the effect of the goo, he soon fell asleep. Fang Yuan smiled lightly, taking out blood skull goo. This goo had a crystal-like texture, it was the size of a baby's skull and could be held in one palm. Right now, it was full of fresh blood, it was scarlet, flickering with demonic blood light. This blood. It was obtained by Fang Yuan secretly killing Chang tribesmen these days. The sleeping Chang Ji-yu's lips curled up. A smile of happiness appeared on his face. He would never have thought that the main culprit who had been assassinating Chang tribesmen these days was the biological father he adored and worshipped the most. Even outsiders like He Lulan were kept in the dark, not suspecting Fang Yuan. Go! Fang Yuan willed, blood skull goo slowly flew out of his palm, circling around Chang Ji-yu. Next, blood skull goo stopped above Chang Ji-yu's head, opening its mouth and spitting out a thick stench of blood. The blood directly entered Chang Ji-yu's head, skin, hair, following his meridians, finally gathering in his aperture. Chang Ji-yu's aptitude started to rise slowly but steadily. By the time Chang Ji-yu woke up, Fang Yuan had already disappeared. The previous encounter was like a dream, causing Chang Ji-yu to be suspicious. But the pile of goo worms and sufficient food on the ground was the best proof, proving that everything had really happened. Heavens, my aptitude really rose, it is now 96%. After inspecting his aperture, Chang Ji-yu shouted in joy. Stay here and cultivate properly these few days. Use all the relic goo that father left behind, this way, your cultivation will reach rank 5 upper stage. The other goo worms on the ground were temporarily lent to you by me. There is an east window goo inside that records the details of the killer move, just practice according to it. An echo entered Chang Ji-yu's ears. Chang Ji-yu was extremely excited. Ah, this is father's voice. Lord Father, your son will definitely not disappoint you. Your son will definitely become a rank 5 goo master and master the killer move. Chang Ji-yu's heart surged with unbounded heroism and fighting spirit. He sat cross-legged on the spot, taking out a yellow gold relic goo and placing it in his aperture. Fang Yuan had been observing in secret. This is the person you chose to test the goo on. He is really not bad. In his mind, Mo Yao's will sneered, but in the east window goo, you specially pointed out the flaws of 6-arm heavenly zombie king. The goo worms you lent him were also not tampered with, aren't you afraid he will remember the flaws and use them carefully, not turning into a heavenly zombie? Hee, Mo Yao, you don't need to worry. I still have this bit of ability to grasp people's hearts. You haven't used the killer move 6-arm heavenly zombie king, but when you turn into a heavenly zombie, that feeling of endless power is so intoxicating. Even I am mesmerized by it. Chang Ji-yu is a young man, his temperament is lacking in self-control. When he practices the killer move, he naturally needs to find wolf groups to practice with. This is my territory, when the time comes, I just need to guide him and he won't become a heavenly zombie. Fang Yuan's tone was confident. You humans are just so crafty and sinister. Just like this blood skull goo that you used. Us ink men would never refine this kind of evil goo worm to harm our own clansmen. Mo Yao ridiculed. Fang Yuan was not angry, instead smiling. Aren't you Spirit Affinity House's fairy, the representative of the righteous path? Why didn't you stop me? That would require me to have the ability to stop it. Moreover, why should I stop your human race's internal strife? I can't wait for all of you humans to die. Only then will there be space for us variant humans to survive. Mo Yao rolled his eyes. Her identity was very peculiar. She was a certain generation's fairy of Spirit Affinity House and had an extraordinary relationship with Bo Qing, but she was also an Inkman and not a pure human. She looked at the humans killing each other like how the humans looked at the snowmen. Or the feeling of beast groups fighting each other. But, do I really not have the ability to stop it? Fang Yuan suppressed this doubt in his heart. 3 days later, Chang Ji-yu used relic goo and successfully raised his cultivation to rank 5 upper stage. Next, he started to practice the killer move 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King without stopping. Sure enough, as Fang Yuan expected, he was intoxicated by the killer move's vast power, gradually forgetting the killer move's flaws. Under Fang Yuan's intentional manipulation, an intense battle of attrition was created. In the intense battle, Chang Ji-yu charged left and right, fighting to his heart's content and forgetting the time. By the time the battle ended, he discovered to his horror that he had already turned into a heavenly zombie. 2 days later, Fang Yuan appeared in front of him again. Father, save me. Chang Ji-yu, who had turned into a monster, knelt on the ground. He anxiously asked for help. My son, how did you become like this? Fang Yuan was greatly shocked and asked angrily, I had clearly warned you not to overuse this killer move. How could you forget this most crucial thing? Father. I am ashamed, I was muddle-headed and forgot the time. By the time I discovered it, it was already too late for regrets. Father. Chang Ji-yu was extremely ashamed, kneeling on the ground and looking at Fang Yuan with teary eyes. Right now, he was neither human nor ghost, his only hope was on Fang Yuan. Sigh, this is difficult. In this state, even if I use yin-yang rotation goo, I won't be able to save you. This killer move's power is peerless, but it is also because of this that the repercussions are extremely severe. Even I, your father, have no way. Fang Yuan spread his arms, his expression was one of grief, anger, and conflict. Even, father, you have no way. Chang Ji-yu knelt on his knees and walked towards Fang Yuan's feet, his expression was one of disappointment and fear. Fang Yuan sighed repeatedly, this killer move has a great origin. I took a great risk and barged into a Gu immortal inheritance, risking my life to obtain this immortal killer move. This is an immortal killer move. No wonder it is so powerful. Chang Ji-yu was stupefied, although Fang Yuan had a tall and imposing image in his mind, compared to a Gu immortal, he was undoubtedly inferior. Chang Ji-yu had always been Chang tribe's young tribe leader, although he was not familiar with Gu immortals, he was by no means a stranger. I was wrong, I made a huge mistake, how could I be so eager for quick success? Chang Ji-yu cried loudly, his voice was as sharp and unpleasant as an owl's. Suddenly, he knelt on the ground and kowtowed towards Fang Yuan, crying, Father, your son has failed to live up to your ardent expectations. Your son was wrong, your son has let you down. No, it is precisely like this, I needed you to become like this. Fang Yuan laughed inwardly, but on the surface, he helped Chang Ji-yu up. My son, how many times have I told you, don't cry? You can't cry. Although you were wrong, I, your father, am also at fault. These days, I have only been exploring this labyrinth round and did not take care of you at all times. Your father believes that there is always a way out. We will research together and find a way to turn you back into a human. There will definitely be a way. Believe in your father, believe in yourself. Fang Yuan's words were sincere, his eyes slightly teary. Father. Chang Ji-yu cried continuously. He was thoroughly moved. He had turned into a monster, he did not even dare to look at his own face. But his father Chang Shan-yin did not feel disgusted, it was clearly his son's fault, but he still took the blame. Now that his son had become like this, he still did not give up. This is the deepest bond between father and son. This is my father, my biological father. Chang Ji-yu was extremely moved, a flame of hope was ignited in his heart of despair, he had the confidence to continue living. Child, you should stay here for now. Let me think about how I can change you back to your original state. As for Chang tribe, father will take care of it. Don't worry, rest well here, with us father and son working together, why would we be afraid of a mere killer move dead object? Fang Yuan's words made Chang Ji-yu feel like he had found his backbone. Chapter 596. Ah! The mournful screams almost pierced through the eardrums. Chang Ji-yu's body trembled in pain, his muscles bulged as the 6 monstrous arms on his back danced chaotically, stirring up the wind like thunder. But Fang Yuan only needed one hand to firmly press him in the air. At this moment, his gaze was like lightning as he controlled his goo worms while shouting, "My son, endure. This is the time." Chang Ji-yu was in so much pain that he almost lost his reason, this was inhuman pain. Even though he had transformed into a heavenly zombie and had almost no sense of pain, he could still feel every inch of his skin and muscles being mercilessly and cruelly torn apart. But Fang Yuan's words were like a clear spring, pouring into Chang Ji-yu's heart. Chang Ji-yu endured with all his might, and finally, just as he was about to faint, the intense pain dissipated like the tide. Success, success. Chang Ji-yu breathed roughly, his head was splitting, he barely opened his eyes and saw that the skin on his arms had already turned back into fresh flesh and blood. Even the 6 monstrous arms that grew out of his back showed signs of shrinking. Nothing was more attractive to Chang Ji-yu than returning to his human form. At this moment, he almost cried tears of joy. Not good. Suddenly, Fang Yuan spoke with a gloomy tone. Chang Ji-yu's newly recovered arms almost instantly turned back into a heavenly zombie state, turning into a withered tree. The 6 arms on his back also grew back, extremely stubborn. No, no. Why did they turn back? Father. Chang Ji-yu screamed in panic, subconsciously asking for help from Fang Yuan. But when he saw the feigned exhaustion on Fang Yuan's face, Chang Ji-yu could not cry out. Father is tired. That's right, father has been helping me these days, thinking of close to 100 methods without sleeping or resting. Who knows how many goo worms have been wasted? At least the rank 5 goo I saw. There were 70 to 80. What reason do I have to blame father? This is all because of my carelessness, a huge mistake. Father, your son has let you down. Chang Ji-yu felt heartache and shame, but also felt the blissful feeling of a child being taken care of by a wolf king, like grass being sheltered by a tree. Damn it, this heavenly corpse is really tenacious. Even this method doesn't work. Fang Yuan gritted his teeth. He asked in his mind, Mo Yao, what other methods do you have? Tell me quickly. Fang Yuan had come up with more than a dozen methods, but they had all been rejected before. Mo Yao was the one who came up with the idea for the experiment. This was also one of Fang Yuan's plans. On one hand, it was to constantly test Chang Ji-yu. He was trying to find a way to return to his human state. On the other hand, it was also an opportunity to stimulate Mo Yao's will to think continuously and consume her power. Mo Yao pondered for a moment before saying, "There's another way, but it's more dangerous. The person testing the goo will suffer 3 times the pain of the previous test. It's extremely likely that he'll die from the pain. He is a heavenly corpse. He could be considered dead. Why would he die from pain?" Fang Yuan was puzzled. He can only be considered half a dead man. His body is dead, but his soul is still left in his body. Unless his soul is sucked into the door of life and death, only then can he be considered truly dead. Mo Yao explained. The door of life and death was one of the secluded domains of heaven and earth. It was very famous and was recorded in the legends of Renzu. The current era was different from the immemorial antiquity era. The door of life and death had disappeared long ago and had changed owners several times. Their control over departed spirits was greatly reduced. That was why monsters like zombies existed. If this was during Renzu's era, there would be no zombies in the world. Mo Yao's method was extremely risky. It could cause the person's soul to shatter and disintegrate from the pain. Once Chang Ji Yu's soul shattered, he would die completely. Mo Yao urged again, "Lad, there are gains and losses in everything. The killer move's power is unparalleled, but the flaws are hard to make up for. These days, you have experimented so many times and spent your family's wealth. You even borrowed money from He tribe and others. You are already aware of the difficulty. This is my final method. I cannot guarantee it will be effective. Moreover, this method is extremely dangerous. There is a slim chance of survival. Whether to use this method or not, it is up to you. This son of yours has already completely transformed into a heavenly corpse. His battle strength is outstanding. He is a very good fighting force. He also listens to your words. Sacrificing him like this is really too much of a pity. I advise you to keep him by your side and dispatch him." Fang Yuan did not speak. "Father, please rest more. This son is not in a hurry." On the other side, Chang Ji Yu also said. Fang Yuan looked over. Although Chang Ji Yu had transformed into a heavenly corpse and had an ugly appearance, his eyes were still clear, filled with admiration and worship towards him. Fang Yuan smiled, "Child, father has already thought of a good method. This method is extremely dangerous, your life will be in danger. But the possibility of success is very high. Father is currently hesitating." Sigh. In his mind, Mo Yao sighed faintly. Although Fang Yuan said so, Chang Ji Yu, who hated himself and was determined to recover, only had one choice when he heard it. Sure enough, when Chang Ji Yu heard this, he hesitated for a moment before his eyes blossomed with a strange light. "Lord Father, please use this method. This son's current appearance is simply worse than death." Fang Yuan gazed into Chang Ji Yu's eyes. "But, you are my only child, father." Chang Ji Yu cried, prostrating on the ground. He hugged Fang Yuan's calf. "This son also cannot bear to part with you. But this son really does not dare to continue living with this kind of face. Even if there is only a trace of hope, this son will still strive to struggle." Fang Yuan was silent for a long time before letting out a long sigh. "Never mind. People always have to live according to their own wishes. Father also cannot bear to let you continue to suffer like this. Rest for a few days, let father prepare a bit. After a few days, we will make our final attempt." After a few days. Chang Ji Yu's voice was already hoarse. "Persevere a bit more." Fang Yuan's gaze was warm, his heart as calm as ice as he encouraged. But the next moment, Chang Ji Yu's screams suddenly stopped. This was the 307th time he fainted from the pain. Truly useless. Fang Yuan's expression was grim as he snorted in dissatisfaction, stopping the goo worm's activation. This experiment had to be carried out when Chang Ji Yu was conscious, otherwise it would be useless. Chang Ji-yu fainting meant that his soul had already shattered, reaching the brink of collapse once again. Fang Yuan had no choice but to stop. Using a soul path goo worm to slightly nourish his soul. I said before, this method does not have much hope, let's leave Chang Ji-yu alive. In his mind, Mo Yao advised in a compassionate tone. Fang Yuan snorted, his eyes narrowed as a sharp cold light flashed in his eyes. Try again. Try one last time. Chang Ji-yu slowly woke up, his vision turning from blurry to clear. He saw Fang Yuan standing at the side. In his eyes, his father was haggard and exhausted. This made his heart wrench, tears flowed down his eyes in shame as he choked with sobs. Father, let's try again, don't be discouraged. Don't lose heart. Fang Yuan consoled with a smile. Father, if I still faint from the pain this time, don't try again. Father, this is all my fault, you really should have a good rest. Chang Ji-yu said. All right, after trying this time, it is time to have a good rest. Fang Yuan sighed. The deep meaning in his tone was not something Chang Ji-yu could sense. First, 3 rank 5 goo worms were activated together. Next, other goo worms were added. Some of these goo worms stopped on Chang Ji-yu's face, some burrowed into his skin, some mixed into his blood vessels and flowed into his heart. Ah! The intense pain came again. Chang Ji-yu gritted his teeth and growled. Soon, he opened his mouth and let out a loud roar, his expression distorted. Fang Yuan's hands moved methodically, adding goo worms one after another. The more goo worms there were, the more intense Chang Ji-yu's pain. He struggled with all his strength, his eyes rolled back, losing his rationality from the pain. He was in a state of madness. Stop. His soul won't be able to hold on for much longer, Mo Yao advised in his mind. But Fang Yuan seemed not to have heard it, continuing to add goo worms. Enough, this number has already surpassed all previous attempts. Chang Ji-yu really can't hold on any longer. Mo Yao could not bear to watch. Fang Yuan coldly snorted. No reply. You are too reckless, if this goes on, he will die completely. In his mind, Mo Yao's will protested. How can I not take some risks? Fang Yuan sneered, increasing the number of goo worms to the maximum. His eyes shone with excitement. Add in 3 more goo worms and I will be able to see the effect. This is the 3rd one. Good, this is the 2nd one. Wonderful, there is only one left, success or failure depends on this. Ugh. Fang Yuan's expression turned sluggish, the surrounding goo worms suddenly scattered like fireworks. Chang Ji-yu no longer struggled, motionlessly floating in the air. He was dead. The pain was enough to make one's soul fly away. But his expression was very serene. The surroundings returned to silence. You are the one who caused his death. In his mind, Mo Yao's voice was ice cold. I am the one who caused his death. Fang Yuan's brows slightly raised, lightly laughing, he died a worthy death. At least I know how stubborn the flaw of this killer move is. Mo Yao did not speak again, as if she was ashamed of Fang Yuan's cold-blooded and despicable actions. She concealed her figure, disappearing from Fang Yuan's mind. The smile on Fang Yuan's face slowly disappeared. He increasingly realized that Mo Yao's will in his mind was an extremely huge threat. Did she know the method to deal with the flaw of 6-arm heavenly zombie king killer move? Did she know the correct method, but purposely did not want to say it? Or did she not want to think, in case she weakened herself? Especially when the killer move's flaw was so severe, at the crucial moment, Mo Yao's will would suddenly attack his mind, causing Fang Yuan's thoughts to become chaotic. Even if Fang Yuan wanted to stop the killer move, it was impossible. What goo did Mo Yao's will use? These days, I have been collecting wisdom path information from all over, and also purchased many wisdom path goo worms that can condense wills. But I've never found any worm that can produce such a mysterious, unfathomable will like hers. Sigh, I don't have much time left. Right now, 88-point Jinyang Tower has almost 60 floors. He Lulan is attacking the 39th floor with all her strength. It seems that her target is most likely wooden chicken goo. Chapter 597. After coming to Imperial Court Blessed Land for so long, and entering 88-point Jinyang Tower many times, Fang Yuan had never forgotten his original intention of coming to Northern Plains. That was to save Dang Hun Mountain. And to save Dang Hun Mountain, he needed landscape as before goo. To obtain this goo, there were many difficulties, and the key lay in one person. This person was Tai Bai Yunsheng. Ever since Tai Bai Yunsheng joined He tribe army, Fang Yuan had been paying attention to him. Several months ago, Fang Yuan had obtained a piece of information after He Lulan obtained a one-edge owner token and could check the rewards of every round. Tai Bai Yunsheng immediately went to ask about the existence of lifespan goo. But back then, 88-point Jinyang Tower did not have lifespan goo. Only when the 55th floor condensed did He Lulan tell Tai Bai Yunsheng that she had found a 15-year lifespan goo. After the 55th floor condensed, He Lulan confirmed the location of the lifespan goo. It was the reward at the 85th round. From then on, Tai Bai Yunsheng put all his energy into attacking the 55th floor. He incited goo masters many times to gather large groups and charge through the obstacles. Relying on his prestige, wealth, and asking for help from experts like He Lulan, he made good progress. Hard work pays off. Tai Bai Yunsheng expended all his wealth and finally reached the 85th round. Fang Yuan naturally did not want to see Tai Bai Yunsheng get what he wanted. Tai Bai Yunsheng was old and did not have much lifespan left. It was normal for him to want to use lifespan goo to extend his lifespan. But if he really obtained this lifespan goo, he would not take the risk of ascending to immortal. If he did not take the risk of ascending to immortal, heaven and earth would not sense him and form the immortal goo landscape as before. Without landscape as before goo, what could Fang Yuan use to save Dang Hun Mountain that was about to perish? Especially in the past few days, there was news that Tai Bai Yunsheng had tried many times to break through, and there was hope. He didn't hesitate to put He Lulan on credit, and even promised He Lulan to join He tribe. The requirements to become an external elder. Thereupon, Tai Bai Yunsheng used He tribe's funds to recruit a large number of experts. With a grand lineup, he charged into the 55th floor to make the final attack. In his previous life, Tai Bai Yunsheng had risked his life to ascend to immortality. However, Fang Yuan was cautious. Not daring to take the risk, he decided to make a move personally. Time waits for no man. Fang Yuan had originally planned to get rid of Mo Yao's will first, as he had to deal with the internal situation before dealing with the external situation. However, there was no progress on this matter. Now, he could only use the OP token and sneak into the 55th floor. Tai Bai Yunsheng had already figured out the situation on the 55th floor. A magnificent river of blood flowed here. In the depths of the river stood a grand and majestic Blood Dao Palace. In the Blood Dao Palace, there were 3 main halls and 69 auxiliary halls. Every palace had large numbers of Blood Dao Goo worms, as well as Blood Beast guards. Blood Dao Goo worms moved in groups and had majestic power. But as long as they spent time. Eventually, there would be a time when they were exhausted. The troublesome ones were the blood beasts. After these blood beasts were killed, they would absorb the blood energy to revive after a short while. It could be said that there was no end to killing, and no end to killing. Tai Bai Yunsheng's several attempts to charge in had all failed at the hands of these blood beasts. But in his last attempt, he inadvertently succeeded. He was pleasantly surprised to find, as long as he charged into the deepest part of the palace and took the token hanging on the main beam, the blood beasts in this hall would dissipate on their own. This discovery gave Tai Bai Yunsheng a strong sense of confidence. He was penniless and did not hesitate to sell himself to He tribe to borrow funds. He gathered a group of Goo masters and charged through this round. When Fang Yuan secretly entered this floor, Tai Bai Yunqing's group had already charged through 33 auxiliary halls. They were currently engaged in an intense battle in the majestic main hall. Fang Yuan took out the 6-edge owner token and with a thought, this floor instantly fell into his control. The 6-edge owner token allowed Fang Yuan to control 6 floors of True Yang building. Fang Yuan had once used one chance to control the 7th floor. Now, he was using the second chance to control this 55th floor. He Lulan had a 1-edge owner token and controlled the 5th floor. Fang Yuan willed as his body vanished on the spot. At the next moment, he appeared on the main beam of the main hall. He leisurely sat on the main beam, not far from him was that crucial token. Holding his breath and concentrating, the scene of Tai Bai Yunqing's group fighting appeared in Fang Yuan's mind. The deeper they went into the main hall, the more blood beast guards there were. The battle was extremely intense. Tai Bai Yunqing's group only had less than 50 people left. As they advanced, they suffered heavy casualties, leaving behind large numbers of corpses. 2 rank 5 Gu Master experts, Zhu Zai and Gao Yang, took turns to be the spearhead of the group. As for Tai Bai Yunqing, as the number 1 healing Gu Master in Northern Plains, he was protected at the center of the group. He continued to use man as before Gu, rays of white light shot out and shone on the corpses, reviving the Gu Master, or shone on the living, healing their injuries and restoring their primeval essence. But even though Tai Bai Yunqing was rank 5 peak stage, he was still in a difficult situation. Members of the group continued to fall, although he tried his best, he could not save everyone. Countless blood beasts surged out from the corridors and rooms of the main hall, densely packed together and piled up on the group's path. The closer they got to the crucial token, the stronger the blood beasts were. Especially the blood beasts, they could absorb blood qi and recover quickly, reviving continuously. Tai Bai Yunqing's group advanced to this place, but the blood beasts behind them revived again and chased after them. The group's situation was getting more and more dangerous. No wonder in my previous life, Tai Bai Yunqing had to take the risk to ascend to immortal. This round's difficulty is quite high, unless a blood path Gu Master takes action. Fang Yuan controlled this floor, he could see Tai Bai Yunqing's actions clearly. This round, to a blood path Gu Master, was no different from an immortal realm. There were large numbers of blood path wild Gu that could be subdued, as well as pure blood beasts that could be devoured to raise their blood path cultivation. Unfortunately, blood path was not tolerated in this world. Because of blood sea ancestor, once a blood path Gu Master appeared, they would immediately be chased by the righteous path. Because blood path battle strength could be raised quickly, even demonic path Gu Masters were wary of them. Often, once a blood path Gu Master was discovered, not only would they be chased by the righteous path, they would also be ambushed by demonic path Gu Masters. In He tribe army, there was not a single blood path Gu Master. Even if there was one, they would be hidden deeply and would not be used by Tai Bai Yunqing. Fang Yuan probed for a while and realized that Tai Bai Yunqing's chances of success were very slim. The worry in his heart. Immediately, more than half of it dissipated. Fang Yuan lay on the beam, taking out the legends of Renzu, he played time while paying attention to Tai Bai Yunqing's movements. Charging into 88-point Jinyang Tower would also result in death. Fang Yuan wanted landscape as before Gu, he could not let Tai Bai Yunqing die now. Charge, we must break out of this encirclement. Otherwise, we will all die. Tai Bai Yunqing's face was covered in blood. He shouted with all his might to raise the morale. One, bo, the blood fiends roared and roared furiously. Like a huge wave of blood, they pounced on the group. The main hall was peaceful. Fang Yuan leisurely flipped through the book in his hand, and even adjusted his posture, so that he could lie down more comfortably. Roar! A blood beast with the head of a tiger and body of a horse charged into the group of Gu Masters, crazily biting and tearing at them. Of the 2 Gu Masters who were attacked, one died and one was injured. Man as before. Tai Bai Yunqing shouted, he waved his palm and a white light shot out. It shone on the injured Gu master. The Gu master in his hands immediately returned to his previous state. The terrifying injuries caused by the blood beasts disappeared. The injured Gu master breathed roughly, still in a state of shock, and temporarily retreated into the inner circle. The gap he left behind was immediately filled by others. But that dead Gu master's corpse was violently dragged out by the surrounding blood beasts. Tai Bai Yunqing did not make a move. He could not become an immortal. Even a rank 5 Gu master had limited primeval essence and needed to use it carefully. Moreover, this dead Gu master's Gu worms were severely damaged, especially his defensive Gu, which had been pierced and destroyed. Even if he was saved, he would be killed again. The remaining Gu masters cursed in pain, but could only look at their comrade's corpse. Dozens of blood beasts were crazily gnawing at them. Blood beasts were extremely sensitive to blood, a trace of blood would make them go crazy. They could strengthen themselves by devouring the blood of strong creatures. Soon, all the blood of the dead Gu master was sucked dry. The entire corpse turned into a dried corpse. It was a terrible sight to behold. The blood beasts that absorbed his blood started to grow human shapes. Some pupils turned into human pupils. Some grew a few human ears, while some grew nimble human arms. But because they wasted time devouring the corpse, the pressure on Tai Bai Yunqing and the rest was greatly reduced. They took the chance to advance by dozens of steps. Fang Yuan flipped The Legends of Ren Zhu to the 3rd chapter, section 14. Northern Dark Ice Soul saved his sister Guyue Desolate Yin. The two once again asked Cognition Gu about how to save their father. Cognition Gu said, "O humans, Qingbai Mountain has already disappeared. I do not know when or where it will form again. I do not know any other methods to save your father. But don't be discouraged, you can go and ask Wisdom Gu. I am its mother. Wisdom is the crystallization of cognition." The student surpassed the master. What Cognition Gu did not know, Wisdom Gu might know. Northern Dark Ice Soul and Guyue Desolate Yin found Wisdom Gu under Cognition Gu's guidance. Wisdom Gu had a grudge with Ren Zhu. Back then, Ren Zhu had used Rule and Regulation Gu to capture Wisdom Gu. But Wisdom Gu escaped in the end. At first, Wisdom Gu was not willing to help Northern Dark Ice Soul and Desolate Guyue Desolate Yin. But seeing that they were introduced by his mother Cognition Gu, he said reluctantly, "Oh humans, I can give you some pointers. But I need a reward. One of you has to give me your middle age." "I will give you my middle age." Desolate Guyue Desolate Yin immediately said without hesitation. She was awakened by her younger brother, Northern Dark Ice Soul, and the meaning of her life was to save her father, Ren Zhu. Thus, she had no choice but to answer now. Northern Dark Ice Soul could not compete with her sister, she could only give up her middle age. This meant that once Guyue Desolate Yin passed her youth, she would directly skip middle age and enter old age. But in order to save her father, she could not care so much. Wisdom Gu obtained Desolate Guyue Desolate Yin's middle age and guided her. At the center of the Golden Desert in the west, there is a still sapphire sea. It is calm and smooth like a mirror. That is the source of all living beings. All life in the world originates from there. And in the depths of the blue sea, there are many life Gu that illuminate all living beings in the world. Dive into the sea. If you can find a human-shaped life Gu, bring it ashore. This human-shaped life Gu can give your father a new life. But pay attention to the time. You cannot exceed 15 minutes, otherwise you will be assimilated by the blue sea. At the end, the Wisdom Gu added, "It is not easy to find a human-shaped life Gu. Only those who truly understand the true meaning of life can do it. If you cannot do it, don't blame my method for not being effective." Desolate Guyue Desolate Yin wanted to ask something, but Wisdom Gu flew away after saying so. It did not give the siblings any chance. Noisy roars and ghostly cries entered their ears. Blood beasts were like a tide, surging forward. Tai Bai Yunsheng and the rest were like reefs, resisting the attacks of the blood beasts again and again, moving forward step by step with difficulty. Soon, we are only 300 steps away from the main hall. Only 300 steps left. Someone shouted, boosting morale. Careful. Suddenly, a Gu master beside him warned. That morale-boosting Gu master was dazed and was fiercely hit by a blood beast with a bear's body and dragon's head. Bam! The Gu master's ribs were instantly shattered, a mouthful of blood mixed with fragments of his organs spurted out. His body flew out, and the Gu masters behind him tried their best to stop him. As long as she sacrificed herself, she could save her father. This was the greatest meaning of Desolate Guyue, Desolate Yin's life. Humans are the gems of heaven and earth. It is just that whether a gem is bright or not, we need to carve it ourselves. Every effort we make, every choice we make, is a carving. And humans can only obtain life by sacrificing their lives. Desolate Guyue, Desolate Yin said this leisurely before sinking into the blue sea. Northern Dark Ice Soul tried his best to stop it, but he could not. Desolate Guyue, Desolate Yin had become a monster with unparalleled strength. He was not its match. 15 minutes later, Desolate Guyue, Desolate Yin was assimilated by the blue sea, turning into a human-shaped sapphire. But this sapphire was not in the shape of a complete human, it was missing a small part. This was because earlier, Desolate Guyue, Desolate Yin had traded his middle age to Wisdom Gu. People often spend half of their lives before they understand what life is. Northern Dark Ice Soul held back his tears as he left the golden desert with this sapphire. He did not feel the joy of success, but instead fell into great guilt. In a way, he was the one who caused his sister's death. 50 steps left. Tai Bai Yunsheng shouted with all his might. After advancing with great difficulty, his companions fell every few moments. The intense battle had reduced the Gu masters beside him to only 5. But success was right in front of him. Let's work harder, I want to tear these blood beasts to pieces. Zhu Zai and Gao Yang stood on the left and right of Tai Bai Yunsheng, protecting him as they shouted to raise the morale. 30 steps. 2 fell, only Tai Bai Yunsheng, Zhu Zai, and Gao Yang were left. The surrounding blood beasts bared their fangs and claws, looking sinister and terrifying. They advanced wave after wave, hundreds and thousands of them. 10 steps. Zhu Zai and Gao Yang exerted all their strength, but because their Gu worms were overused, they suffered great losses and their primeval essence was almost depleted. This old man swears that I will repay you greatly in the future. Tai Bai Yunsheng's eyes shined, his tone extremely sincere. Old sir, what are you saying? We were saved by you back then, without old sir, we would not be here today. Old sir's life-saving grace is as heavy as a mountain. Even if we die today, we will repay your kindness. Gao Yang and Zhu Zai replied emotionally. The righteous path also has hypocrites, but the demonic path has true heroes. 5 steps. Save me. Zhu Zai shouted and pounced forward, disregarding defense. He wanted to perish together with the blood beasts blocking the way. Tai Bai Yunsheng stretched out his palm, but could not summon white light. He shouted, "Oh no, my primeval essence is depleted." This terrible news caused Gao Yang's face to turn pale. All along, Tai Bai Yunsheng had been the core. With the continuous support of man as before Gu, they were able to advance so deeply. No worries, no blood beasts dare to enter the main hall. As long as I enter the main hall and recover, Zhu Zai can still be saved. Tai Bai Yunsheng shouted again. Gao Yang's spirit was roused. Tai Bai Yunsheng was right. Although the blood beasts tore the corpses apart, their main purpose was to absorb the blood. As long as most of the corpses were still there was hope of saving Zhu Zai. Howl! In the next moment, a giant python-like blood beast suddenly appeared behind him. It opened its bloody mouth and swallowed Gao Yang in one gulp. 2 steps. The main hall's door was right in front of him. Tai Bai Yunsheng's body was riddled with injuries. He staggered out from the gap between the blood beasts. At the crucial moment, he used his last precious primeval essence to create a golden armor, blocking the attacks for him. Arrived. Only by sacrificing one's life can one obtain life. Gao Yang, Zhu Zai, I will remember your sacrifice. Tai Bai Yunsheng used all his remaining strength and pushed open the main hall's door. He fell down in the main hall. The blood beasts behind him roared and bared their fangs, but did not dare to enter the main hall. Just like what Tai Bai Yunsheng had observed earlier. Tai Bai Yunsheng laid on the ground, without a trace of strength. The injuries all over his body brought him intense pain. He breathed heavily for a few times, before suddenly laughing loudly, his laughter mixed with sobs. His face was covered in tears. There are 3 main palaces and 69 auxiliary palaces in this trial. If I can clear all of them in the stipulated time, I will get a high-grade assessment. Clearing 2 main halls and 46 side halls is a middle-grade assessment. I cleared 1 main hall and 23 side halls, but I can only get a low-grade assessment. But I got lifespan goo. A 15-year lifespan goo can increase my lifespan by 15 years. 15 years. Fortunately, the scenes were not endless. There would be an end eventually. After reading through Tai Bai Yunsheng's life, Fang Yuan immediately stopped his goo worms and sat on the ground. He breathed roughly, his whole body was covered in sweat. A long while later, his pupils regained their focus. Soul-searching was not a simple matter. Especially when Fang Yuan was worried about Tai Bai Yunsheng's safety, he did not want to harm him, thus he had to bear most of the pressure himself. After stopping the soul search, Tai Bai Yunsheng was still in a deep slumber. However, his originally tightly knitted brows had relaxed. His breathing was stable, his expression peaceful. Instead, Fang Yuan's brows were slightly furrowed. I didn't find it. He sighed in regret. Didn't find what? In his mind, Mo Yao's will could not help but ask in confusion. Fang Yuan's actions made her curious. Fang Yuan did not answer her, but his frown deepened. Regarding the important plan of landscape as before Gu, how could he tell Mo Yao? Landscape as before Gu was an immortal Gu that Tai Bai Yunsheng obtained after he became an immortal. Rumors said that this Gu was created when Tai Bai Yunsheng became an immortal. Heaven and earth resonated with him, causing a burst of divine light. But there was another possibility. Tai Bai Yunsheng already had the immortal recipe of landscape as before in his mind. If he really had the Gu recipe, then Fang Yuan could steal it, as well as river as before and mountain as before Gu, and bring them to Langya blessed land, asking the land spirit of Langya to refine the immortal Gu for him. This way, he would not need to snatch food from the tiger's mouth, and the danger would be greatly reduced. But after Fang Yuan's soul searched, the result was terrible. Fang Yuan did not find the immortal Gu recipe of landscape as before. This meant that the rumors were true. Landscape as before Gu was indeed obtained by Tai Bai Yunsheng when he became an immortal. Heaven and earth resonated with him. This meant that if Fang Yuan wanted to obtain this immortal Gu, he would have to snatch it from the hands of Tai Bai Yunsheng, who had become an immortal. Fang Yuan was not a Gu immortal yet. In Fang Yuan's memory, there were no successful cases of fighting an immortal as immortal. It was no doubt harder than ascending to heaven. But what other choice did he have? Of the 3 choices back then, this was already the easiest one. His time and energy were invested into this plan. Although Fang Yuan did not have confidence, he could only take the risk and make preparations. Outside 88-point Jinyang Tower, Tai Bai Yunsheng's figure appeared. He is out, he is out. What is the result? Someone saw Tai Bai Yunsheng charge into the main hall. Oh no, Lord Tai Bai Yunsheng is not moving, he seems to have fainted. The surrounding Gu masters immediately gathered around. Looking at him, everyone's expression changed. But such an ironic outcome was not the source of Tai Baiyunqing's pain. His pain was because he had betrayed his comrades for his own selfish desires. Was this still Tai Baiyunqing? Memories flashed in his mind. Again and again. Since young, he had always believed in the power of love. Ever since he was a child, he had a good reputation. When Tai Bai tribe annexed other tribes, he saw his childhood playmate facing the tragic fate of becoming a female slave. He was the one who spoke, wanting to marry her. Thus, he forgave a group of captives. But on their wedding night, his wife betrayed him. The captives contacted enemies and attacked his tribe, causing his parents to die. His subsequent life as a slave was filled with hardships. He had always been suffering from intense inner torment. Finally, one day, he kindly scooped a bowl of water for an old beggar he did not know. The old beggar gave him 3 immortal inheritances to choose from. The first inheritance allowed one to bathe in fire and tread on fire, looking down on the mortal world. The second inheritance allowed one to control wind and float in the sky, roaming freely in the world. The third inheritance allowed one to transcend life and death, helping the common people. Tai Baiyunqing chose the third inheritance. At that moment, he seemed to have found light in the darkness. His heart was no longer tormented. He had no regrets. He was reborn from the ashes. After so many years, the old beggar's laughter still lingered in his ears. Transcending life and death, helping the common people became his creed in life. For the rest of his life, he really did so. He received the gratitude of countless people, his benevolence spread far and wide, his radiance illuminated the whole of northern plains. He was a living legend. But now, he failed. His failure was not because he did not obtain lifespan Gu. It was because he betrayed his comrades, he betrayed his own creed in life. But all of this was done by himself without any hesitation. He used almost his entire life to establish and practice his own creed in life. But at that moment, he destroyed this creed himself. He saw another side of himself, his selfishness. He had once thought that he was that person in everyone's eyes, walking in the grassland under the setting sun, helping the common people, practicing medicine to save the world. But now, in his heart, this image was getting further and further away. He staggered along. Under the afterglow of the setting sun, his shadow became longer and longer. Chapter 599. He Lulan frowned as he walked out of Tai Baiyunqing's room. Experts do not get arrogant in victory and do not give up in defeat. To think that the famous Tai Baiyunqing is only so. He was very dissatisfied with Tai Baiyunqing's mental state. Tai Baiyunqing is the #1 healer. If he is not in good condition, the difficulty of passing the rounds will increase by a lot. Thinking of this, He Lulan raised his head and looked up. At the top of the sacred palace, there were thousands of rays of light shooting out majestically. 67 floors had already condensed in 88-point Jinyang Tower. It was currently condensing the 68th floor. He Lulan looked at it with infatuation. A cold light of determination flashed in his eyes. In this 68th floor, there was a strength path immortal Gu. He Lulan had a one-edge owner token. He knew about this strength path immortal Gu the moment it was absorbed by 88-point Jinyang Tower. This was a rank 6 strength path immortal Gu. It was called Flying Bear Strength Gu. Flying Bear was a desolate beast. It had battle strength on par with Gu immortals. Flying Bear Strength Gu could allow Gu immortals to have a certain chance of summoning a Flying Bear Phantom when they attack, and unleash Flying Bear Divine Strength. This was the immortal Gu that He Lulan needed. With it, he could advance to a Strength Path Gu immortal. I have to get this immortal Gu. With it, there will be hope for my revenge and my great plan. He Lulan clenched his fists, but he soon relaxed. His trusted aide, He Shu, ran over and knelt down at his feet. He Lulan's expression quickly returned to normal. Even in front of his trusted aide, he did not reveal a trace of his true emotions. Every day at this time, He Shu would come and report the situation of the experts in the sacred palace, Lord Chang Shan-yin. He is still at the 90th round of the 7th floor, there is still no progress. Lord Yi Lui Sang is at the 49th floor. I broke through the 81st round and lost 30% of my Gu masters. He Lulan completely opened the 88-point Jinyang Tower to the public. This was a rare act of generosity, and it caused everyone to crazily explore the true Yang Tower. Even if every guest token was sold at a sky-high price, there would still be countless people scrambling for it. Humans die for wealth, and birds die for food. Blinded by greed, many people died in battle. Including Tai Bai Yunxing this time. Chang Biao, Pan Ping, Hao Ji Lu, Gao Yang and Zhu Zai, 5 rank 5 experts had already fallen. This was a huge loss for He Lulan. The smaller the strength he could use, the harder it would be for him to obtain Flying Bear Strength Gu. Of course, he completely opened up the 88-point Jinyang Tower. There were also certain benefits. The Gu masters who participated, as long as they survived, most of them would experience rapid growth. There were also many Gu masters who succeeded. There were many new rank 4 and 5 faces. 88-point Jinyang Tower. This was originally arranged by Giant Sun Immortal for the benefit of his descendants. This 68th floor is the focus of our tribe, it is even more important than the 39th floor. This is a mission specially given by a certain supreme elder of our tribe. Thus, every bit of strength in the sacred palace needs to be cherished. He Shu, from today onwards, announce this news to the public. From today onwards, 88-point Jinyang Tower is closed, everyone has to listen to my orders. Break through the 68th floor. True Yang Tower will be reopened. He Lulan instructed, his tone filled with unquestionable determination. Hearing this was a mission from a certain supreme elder, He Shu's body shook, his expression turning extremely solemn. Go and do it. He Lulan waved his hand. He Shu quickly accepted the order and left. Every imperial court contest was a game of chess played by Gu immortals. Even the strongest Gu master was just a chess piece on the chessboard. Gu immortals would help a tribe participate in the imperial court contest in order to obtain certain immortal Gu, this was the most common situation. He Lulan was certain that closing 88-point Jinyang Tower might cause dissatisfaction, but with the reputation of He tribe's Gu immortals, no one would dare to raise any objections. Tai Bai Yunqing's injuries are severe, but he only needs to rest for half a month before he can join the battle. After all, he is a healing Gu master and is at the back of the battlefield. He needs lifespan Gu, to mobilize him, we can start from this aspect. Chang Shan-yin is competing with the 7th floor. His days are not going well. Because of his carelessness, his own son Chang Ji-yu died in this round. To regain his reputation, he has to get through this round. But he asked for Flying Bear Phantom Immortal Gu from me earlier, and also owed me a huge amount of resources. I can still mobilize him. There is also Yi Lui Sang, he has a Fire Path Supplementary Immortal Gu, it can be of great help. I will use heavy enticement, of course, the most important thing is to mobilize the strength of Shui Song Zi, He Cheng and He Bai. It is time to send a letter to them. He Bai looked at He Lulan's letter and was extremely excited, after waiting for so long, Wooden Chicken Gu has finally appeared, to think it was in the 68th floor. He did not have the slightest doubt of the contents of this letter. After all, He Lulan was He Cheng's son, the current generation leader of He tribe. If his loyalty was to be doubted, then who else in this world could be trusted? At the side, He Cheng laughed heartily, brother, you have waited until the moon is bright and the flowers bloom, your hard work pays off. Did the letter mention the matter of Strength Path Immortal Gu? He Bai's face turned red, I am ashamed, I only cared about wooden chicken goo and forgot about nephew's situation. Nephew has the great strength true martial physique, he needs a strength path immortal goo to advance to goo immortal. Nephew also mentioned this matter in the letter, but unfortunately, the strength path immortal goo has not appeared yet. There is still no strength path immortal goo. Hei Ching frowned. Previously, Hei Bai was worried about wooden chicken goo and was comforted by Hei Cheng. This time, it was Hei Bai's turn to comfort Hei Cheng. Brother, don't worry, 88-point Jinyang Tower needs to condense a total of 88 floors, there are still 20 floors that have not condensed yet. Hei Cheng nodded and sighed, dark limit immortal goo can't be concealed any longer, this can be considered my son's last chance. Sigh, man proposes, God disposes, let's leave it to fate. Hei Bai's heart was fervent as he changed the topic to wooden chicken goo. He reminded, brother, time waits for no man, we need to quickly prepare. We need to provide some assistance to Hei Lulan. Yes. This matter cannot be delayed, where is the place mentioned in the letter? Hei Cheng slowly stood up from his seat. Hei Bai also stood up, it is near Demon Blood Hill. Let's go. The two Gu immortals were very straightforward. They immediately set off. Not long after, they arrived at the sky above Demon Blood Hill. Demon Blood Hill was a famous area in Northern Plains. Back then, the four great tribes of the Righteous Path had joined hands to exterminate the demonic path bandit group that had been wreaking havoc in Northern Plains for hundreds of years. This demonic path bandit group was extremely savage. Because of their deep background, they had the secret support of demonic path Gu immortals. After an intense battle, the bandit group was completely exterminated. The Righteous Path's losses were not light. The blood of the demonic path Gu masters dyed the entire hill red, thus the later generations called it Demon Blood Hill. Hei Lulan's letter requested help. Two Hei tribe Gu immortals. They had already prepared for a long time. They would take it and leave, this trip was to help Hei Lulan get through the checkpoint as soon as possible. But 88-point Jinyang Tower was located in Imperial Court Blessed Land, why did the two Hei tribe Gu immortals come here? This had to be explained from the structure of 88-point Jinyang Tower. As mentioned earlier, 88-point Jinyang Tower was a rank 8 immortal Gu house. It was formed from tens of thousands of small towers, and Divert Disaster Gu was one of its main cornerstones. The small towers were several li apart, covering Imperial Court Blessed Land and taking care of all parts of Northern Plains. Normally, they would absorb the wild Gu worms in Imperial Court Blessed Land. Every 10 years, these small towers would sink one after another. They would sacrifice the wild Gu in the towers, and at the same time, respond to the snow calamity in the outside world of Northern Plains. They would obtain mystical heavenly powers. These heavenly powers would plunder the whole of Northern Plains, taking the precious Gu resources of Northern Plains to the top of Imperial Court Blessed Land's sacred palace, thus forming a layer of 88-point Jinyang Tower. These layers would eventually form the complete 88-point Jinyang Tower. Back then, Giant Sun Immortal's idea was rejected by Long Hair Ancestor. Long Hair Ancestor was a refinement path great-grandmaster, he took a different path and came up with a brilliant idea, refining the current 88-point Jinyang Tower. Every time 88-point Jinyang Tower was formed, it was a process of refining Gu from scratch. Not only did it use the wild Gu in the small towers, it also used the Gu worms it absorbed. For example, the 68th floor, 88-point Jinyang Tower would first absorb Flying Bear strength Gu and refine it, using its own strength to form the 100th round. Then it would absorb other strong Gu worms to form the 99th round. Next would be the 98th round, 97th round, it was like building a tall building, a heavy foundation had to be built first. If the Gu worms were not complete, then True Yang Tower would use Gu recipes, Yuan stone, or inheritance secrets to replace them. Everyone knew that the harder the round in 88-point Jinyang Tower, the greater the reward. Actually, it was because the greater the reward and the stronger the Gu worms, the harder the round would be. It could be said that every goo worm absorbed was a part of 88-point Jinyang Tower. After countless imperial court contests and countless generations of sages and immortals' research, they finally obtained the working mechanism of 88-point Jinyang Tower. Originally, there were no loopholes in it. However, as time passed and the world changed, a loophole appeared, allowing Northern Plains goo masters to make use of it. This loophole was in the refinement aspect. 88-point Jinyang Tower plundered Northern Plains, absorbing goo worms and refining them, using their strength to form the round. What did one rely on to refine goo worms? Will. Back then, how did Fang Yuan refine the liquor worm? He used primeval essence as the carrier, letting the goo master's will continuously wear down the goo worm's will, until the goo worm was filled with the goo master's will. Only then would the goo worm become the goo master's tool. When Fang Yuan refined goo, he had used the immortal goo spring-autumn cicada to take advantage of the situation. Between goo worms, there would be pressure when they were 2 ranks higher. Fang Yuan used the spring-autumn cicada's aura to suppress the low-rank goo worm's will, making it shrink to the side. Then, he poured his primeval essence into it, and his will entered, swallowing the goo worm's will that had shrunk to a point. 88-point Jinyang Tower was not a goo master, so what did it use to refine other goo worms? Giant Sun Immortal specially left his will for this. Giant Sun's will. When Fang Yuan refined the guest halt steel, he had seen Giant Sun's will. It was truly grand like the sun, majestic and vast. In comparison, after Fang Yuan refined the guest halt steel, the will he left behind was as tiny as an ant. 88-point Jinyang Tower used Giant Sun's will to refine goo worms. Immortal venerables were invincible, their wills were also invincible, and could easily destroy any other wills. Thus, 88-point Jinyang Tower had never met with any difficulty when refining goo worms. However, there was a problem. Wills were formed from thoughts. If there was no soul to provide a carrier, constantly thinking would lead to continuous consumption. To resist this astonishing consumption, wills would often choose to sleep. When Fang Yuan entered Water Pavilion, Mo Yao's will, which was stored inside, woke up from its deep sleep. Although Giant Sun's will was as vast as the sun, Giant Sun Immortal had passed away for so many years, he was gradually unable to resist the power of time, and chose to sleep. After Giant Sun's will went into hibernation, 88-point Jinyang Tower's goo refinement speed slowed down. Chapter 600. Fierce winds howled and the blizzard wreaked havoc. Demon Blood Hill, which was covered in dark red grass, was now a vast expanse of white. The towering hill had also succumbed to the might of the 10-year blizzard, becoming as weak as a baby. Howl howl howl, huge figures, at least 10 meters tall, were faintly discernible in the blizzard. These were weather monsters that would only appear in the blizzard, snow monsters. The bigger these snow monsters were, the stronger their battle strength. 10 meters tall snow monsters could battle rank 3 goo masters. 40 meters tall had the strength of a rank 4 goo master. 50 meters tall had the terrifying battle strength of a rank 5 goo master. Along with the blizzard, the snow monsters wreaked havoc in Northern Plains. They slowly gathered and concentrated their attacks on the few lucky survivors in Northern Plains. It brought a death blow to humans and all living things that were struggling at death's door. But everything had its vanquisher. Snow monsters were snowmen's prey. By devouring the flesh and blood of snow monsters, snowmen could increase their reproduction speed and even prolong their lifespan. Hei Bai and Hei Qing stood at the peak of the towering Demon Blood Hill. They were wearing black robes and were especially conspicuous in the vast expanse of white snow. Beside them were the corpses of hundreds of snow monsters. Unless the snow monsters reached 60 meters in size, no matter how many snow monsters there were, they would only be sending themselves to death when facing goo immortals. Hei Bai and Hei Qing had been waiting for a long time. Suddenly, Hei Bai's expression shook as he sensed something and his sharp gaze looked towards the left. There, a whirlpool of blizzard formed in the air. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a giant hand completely made of blizzard, Flying Snow Hand. The Flying Snow Hand finished forming and grabbed towards Hei Bai and Hei Cheng. "Ha, I was waiting for you." Hei Bai laughed heartily and flicked his finger. Large numbers of rank 5 goo worms flew out. Hei Cheng also did the same. The Flying Snow Hand grabbed these goo worms one by one and gripped them tightly. The snow hand collapsed and the goo worms inside disappeared, tightly gripped by a mighty force. They were sucked into Imperial Court Blessed Land. Hei Tribe's 2 goo immortals did not resist and let the Flying Snow Hand grab their goo worms. This situation lasted for an hour as large numbers of rank 5 goo worms were taken away. Hei Bai and Hei Cheng stopped and looked at each other with a smile before their figures flew away. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared without a trace. After a while, Hei Lulan suddenly sensed something. Her eyes lit up as she raised her head and stared at the 88-point Jinyang Tower. Backup is here. At the peak of the sacred palace, mist and multicolored light swayed. The 68th level was still forming. The 100th stage had already been completed. The 68th layer that had yet to form was still in its embryonic form. It shone like liquid as it swayed, containing the large number of goo worms that were brought in from the outside world of northern plains. Some of these goo worms were wild goo, while others came from Hei Cheng and Hei Bai. The 88-point Jinyang Tower would choose the strongest among them. It formed the 99th checkpoint, the 98th checkpoint. Hei Lulan sensed carefully and frowned. Those 2 from Hei Tribe have already made their move. But Xue Songzi is still watching with folded arms. He and Xue Songzi communicated secretly and reached an agreement. One of the terms of the deal was for Xue Songzi to assist him at a specific time. But now, Xue Songzi was not moving at all. Hei Lulan was displeased. He immediately wrote a letter and sent it through a goo worm. Soon, he received a reply. In the letter, Xue Songzi complained, saying that these days, he had been pressured by the 2 Hei Tribe goo immortals. The snowman business had already been squeezed to the point where it could no longer continue. It had plummeted. Moreover, he had already provided many rank 5 goo to Hei Lulan for wooden chicken goo some time ago. At this moment, he did not have the strength to make a move. Excuses. Hei Lulan was furious. He almost crushed the letter goo. Demonic path goo masters are really not good people, they are all treacherous and cunning people. But soon, Hei Lulan restrained the anger on his face. He had actually expected this to happen. After all, he was only a mortal, while Xue Songzi was a high and mighty goo immortal. A transaction between a mortal and a goo immortal was like an ant negotiating with an elephant. The 2 sides were simply not on the same level. If the goo immortal wanted to go back on his words, the mortal could not do anything. Hei Lulan was secretly anxious. The 68th floor was forming. As time passed, the effect of the goo immortal's reinforcements would be weaker. It seems that I need to get wooden chicken goo first before Xue Songzi can make a move. Hei Lulan sneered, immediately gathering everyone. Wooden chicken goo was on the 39th floor of 88-point Jinyang Tower. For several months, Hei Lulan had been focusing on this floor. He also had Xue Songzi's help, thus his progress was smooth. He successfully advanced to the final round. Wooden chicken immortal goo was the reward for this final round. This final round could be said to be difficult, but it could also be said to be easy. The main test was patience and painstaking work. Hei Lulan personally led people and tried 40 to 50 times. He had already understood the situation. Each time, he would nibble away a little bit. Over time, the effect was shocking. There was only the final layer of paper left before he succeeded. Before we attack the 68th floor, we can take down this 39th floor and boost our morale. Hei Lulan thought about it and immediately took action. The next day, he gathered all the goo masters in the sacred palace and held a pledging ceremony. That night, He led everyone and successfully broke through the round, obtaining the rank 6 Immortal Goo Wooden Chicken. Just like He Lulan expected, once the round was broken, the morale was greatly boosted, everyone was filled with fighting spirit, the gloominess of Tai Bai Yunqing's loss was swept away. With Wooden Chicken Immortal Goo in hand, He Lulan's confidence rose greatly, he used this to lure Shui Song Zi to help. 7 days later, the 68th floor was completely formed. He Lulan could not wait any longer, he led everyone to attack. When they reached the round, he did not rush to attack, he ordered the Goo Masters to get into formation. Over 100 refinement path Goo Masters got into formation. These people were carefully selected, they were loyal and reliable, although they were not masters, they were all elites. The Goo Masters got into a round formation, He Lulan slowly walked into the center. He sat down and took out the Two-Edge Owner token. The Two-Edge Owner token slowly rose into the air, at the same time, He Lulan's body started to shine with gray light. The light was like needles, extremely sharp and piercing into the air. Not only He Lulan, the other refinement path Goo Masters also started to shine with gray needle lights. These needle lights continued to grow, becoming thicker and longer. They filled the whole round formation. The needle lights on everyone's bodies touched each other and instantly linked together. A huge gray light slowly stretched out from the round formation, directly piercing the Two-Edge Owner token in the air. Around the round formation, large numbers of Goo Masters were observing and guarding. What are they doing? A young Goo Master asked. A young Goo Master asked in confusion. Beside him, an elderly patted his shoulder, "Hee, this is the foundation of a super tribe. Kid, watch carefully. What you're about to see will leave you dumbfounded." Saying so, the owner token suddenly shook. The tremor was weak, but as the gray light spread, the amplitude rapidly increased. By the time this tremor reached the round formation, it had already turned into a huge tremor. The gray light condensed in the round formation was like a lake of light. After this huge tremor, the lake suddenly burst out with a dazzling radiance. Everyone squinted their eyes. The gray light shone on every corner of the first round. Like snow melting, the world inside the round gradually turned transparent, before completely disappearing. It was like the curtain on the surface was torn apart, revealing the second layer underneath. He Lulan and the rest arrived at the second round like this. This is. We did not make a move, but we actually passed. After a moment of silence, many young Goo Masters started to shout. The young Goo Master earlier was tongue-tied. What method is this? The old Goo Master beside him proudly replied, "This is the refinement path killer move that all super tribes have, it is called Grey Meltdown. It can be quickly passed in 88-point Jinyang Tower. Kid, this is an eye-opener for you, right?" The young Goo Master, who had his horizons broadened, quickly nodded and praised, "Amazing. Such an amazing method. But with such a method, what else do we need to do?" The old Goo Master's smile froze. This method is not effective every time. There are some checkpoints that can use this method, but there are others that can't. Hee. This method is a little interesting. In his mind, Mo Yao's figure appeared. She had an enchanting figure, her charming eyes were like silk as she analyzed, this should be the control of Giant Sun's sleeping will. Inside and outside. The Goo Masters outside the Blessed Land release Goo at a specific location, and these Goo worms will be taken into 88-point Jinyang Tower to refine the round. But Giant Sun's will is sleeping, and the speed of refining Goo worms has become slow. At best, it can only be considered a half refinement. The so-called killer move Grey Meltdown uses the owner token to communicate with the half-refined Goo worms and refine them again. This way, the core of the round has already become his. This round naturally no longer exists, and he can move on to the next round. To achieve this, the key is time. The half-refinement state cannot last long. Even if Giant Sun's will is asleep, as long as he has enough time, he can completely refine these Goo worms. Once these goo worms are refined, the goo master challenging the round will not be able to sense them, and will lose the possibility of forcefully refining them. As expected of a refinement grandmaster, with just one glance, you can analyze it so thoroughly. Fang Yuan laughed inwardly, praising Imo Yao. This method was to compete with 88-point Jinyang Tower to refine goo worms. Chapter 601. He Lulan concentrated on the front, the group was advancing in the forest with difficulty. The intense battle had already lasted for over 6 hours. This was the second round, the air was hot and humid, and the terrain was a vast primitive rainforest. To pass this round, goo masters had to cross the whole forest and reach the stone hall at the other end. However, it was not easy to pass through this forest. Although there were no beast groups in the forest, there were vast numbers of green vines. These green vines coiled around the tall trees and accumulated on the damp ground. Every green vine was at least as thick as a bowl, and was at least 70 to 80 feet long. Ordinary green vines were called green snake vines, and the vines were covered with smooth snake scales. When the goo masters got close, the vines would suddenly shoot out and coil around the goo masters like pythons, killing them. In the surrounding 100 steps of the rainforest, there were about 1,000 green snake vines, the density was extremely high. It was extremely difficult for the goo masters to advance. Along the way, green snake vines attacked from all directions, some shot down from the sky, some shot out from the ground, and some broke through the ground to attack, making it hard for the goo masters to defend against them. As the goo masters advanced in the forest, they suffered the attacks of the green vines at all times, like they were in a vast sea of green vines. The attacks of the green snake vines were heavy and powerful, but their movements were fast and fierce. Even more dangerous was that they often had woodpath goo worms on their bodies, and because of these goo worms, the goo masters group suffered great casualties. Report, a green snake vine king has been discovered ahead. Currently, Lord Yi Lui Sang has already fought with it. After advancing for a while, an investigative goo master returned from the front and reported to He Lulan. He Lulan nodded, continuing to move forward slowly. In every green snake vine group, there was a green snake vine king with battle strength comparable to a rank 4 goo master. But Yi Lui Sang was a rank 5 peak stage expert, the current tribe leader of a super force, Yi Lui tribe. His fire path cultivation was extremely effective against woodpath goo worms. He even had Yi Lui tribe's fire path supplementary immortal goo, taking care of a green snake vine king. It was not a problem. Sure enough, after a while, a report came from the front. Lord Yi Lui Sang has successfully gotten rid of the green snake vine king and has retreated. Lord Chang Shan Yin has taken over and is leading the wolf group to open the way. Emicham, He Lulan replied calmly. The wolf pack was good at attacking but not good at defending, so it was not easy to deal with the vines. But in Chang Shan Yin's hands, there were also wolves like the turtleback wolf that were good at defense. There was also the vermilion flame wolf which had fire path goo worms on its body. In this situation, it could be said to be a great tool to open up the path. The Wolf King is very powerful and can be considered the number 1 combat power, especially when he had a flying bear phantom immortal goo. He Lulan pondered as she walked. Flying bear phantom goo and flying bear strength goo, if the two are used together, it would be perfect. Let Chang Shan Yin work for me first. When the time is ripe, I will make him hand over that flying bear phantom goo. As long as I become a goo immortal, wouldn't a mere wolf king be at my mercy? This is the second test. It seemed to be a test of a goo master's endurance, but it was actually a test of investigative ability. In the dense forest, there were not only green snake vines but also green serpent vines. The green serpent vine was 10 times more powerful than the green serpent vine. It was a strange beast among plants. The route we chose avoided these green serpent vines as much as possible. Only 1 or 2 areas were the territories of the green serpent vines. I am sure there will be 1 or 2 tough battles, but this is also the greatest difficulty of this trip. Hey Lulan felt proud in his heart, we are getting closer to the end. According to this speed, we will be able to pass this round in another hour. Just as he was thinking this, a sudden change occurred. Swoosh swoosh swoosh, the green serpent vines around the group suddenly burst out, piercing through the air with incredible speed. There was even the sound of arrows piercing through the air. The vines' offense suddenly increased by tens of times. The previous battles were between the Gu Masters and the nearby green serpent vines. The vines outside the range were still. They did not move. But now, the green vines within 100 li, no, 1,000 li, had all joined the battle, surging up and creating a tsunami-like wave, crazily pouncing towards the Gu Masters. The Gu Masters were caught off guard and immediately suffered disastrous losses. Countless Gu Masters were sacrificed on the battlefield in a short period of time. How can this be? The green serpent vines suddenly went berserk. The experts shouted in shock. Quick, save me. The Gu Masters at the periphery were wantonly killed by the green vines. I order the entire army to attack, don't care about expenditure, block them for me. If you don't block them, you will die. Hey Lulan shouted, rising into the air and trying to control the situation. But soon, over 100 green serpent vines flew into the air and attacked. Hey Lulan roared in anger, using a dark path method, killing 20 to 30 green serpent vines on the spot before descending to the ground. But the ground was not safe either. Countless green serpent vines and green serpent vines broke out of the ground, causing the entire army to fall into chaos. How can this be? We clearly scouted this place, why would we encounter green serpent vines here? Hey Lulan's eyes were about to split open, unable to understand. Green serpent vines were extremely territorial. But as long as their territory was not invaded, they would be quiet and would not attack. But these green serpent vines went berserk, attacking the Gu Masters as if they had seen their father's murderer. Green serpent vines had strong vitality, even if they were cut into 5 to 6 pieces by the Gu Masters, these 5 to 6 pieces could still bite back at the Gu Masters before dying. Hey Lulan even saw many green serpent vines breaking free from their roots and attacking. How can this be? What is going on? Hey Lulan could not understand, these green serpent vines breaking off their own roots was equivalent to killing themselves. All living beings had the instinct to survive. What kind of hatred was there for them to launch such a desperate suicidal attack? The army was split into several pieces, each fighting their own battles. The Gu Masters retreated step by step, and for a moment, countless soldiers died. Could it be that the second stage is actually a huge trap? This is too strange, this is only the second round, why is the difficulty so high? Hey Lulan was dumbfounded, a huge doubt rising in her heart. This was indeed a huge trap. But the one who set this trap was not 88-point Jinyang Tower, but Fang Yuan who controlled this floor. He first restrained himself and mobilized the green serpent vines in the round, secretly moving them over. Then he accepted the order and joined the vanguard, taking turns to attack from time to time, purposely lowering his speed and stalling for time. When large numbers of green serpent vines were mobilized, Fang Yuan did not hesitate. He immediately launched a sneak attack. The Gu Master army was ambushed and suffered a huge loss. Fang Yuan was an enslavement master, the green serpent vines that had even lower intelligence than beast groups, under his command, cooperated with each other and did not care about sacrifices, erupting with a terrifying battle strength that was 100 times stronger. Especially experts like He Lulan, Yi Lui Sang and Tai Bai Yunsheng. He even specially mobilized green serpent vines that could rival mutated beasts to stop them. Retreat, let's retreat. There are green serpent vines everywhere, if this goes on, the casualties will be even worse. Lord He tribe leader, our tribe leader requests to retreat. Several large tribes urgently sent representatives. Anyone could see it. They had fallen into the ambush of the green serpent vines. No one had the time to think about the reason why the green serpent vines became so sinister and vicious. He Lulan gritted his teeth, a struggling expression appeared on his face as he squeezed out a word, retreat. He also knew that the battle situation had gone out of control. The green serpent vines were not afraid of death and had already penetrated deep. This caused the formation to become chaotic. All the experts were afraid of injuring their own people and were restrained. If the casualties were so severe in the second round, how would He Lulan have the strength to go and snatch the final round's immortal goo? Retreating was a wise move, but it depended on whether Fang Yuan would allow it or not. He controlled this floor, it was a small matter for him to close the entrance and exit. Soon, everyone was shocked to find out. They could not get out. This discovery had a huge impact on their morale. The entire army was on the verge of collapsing. At the crucial moment, He Lulan sensed something amiss and stood up, his voice echoing over 1,000 li. Hold on, I am going to use Grey Meltdown Killer move. Forcefully break through this round. Persevere is victory, persevere is survival. The Goo Masters who were in desperate straits heard these words and were like drowning people grabbing onto a life-saving straw. The morale that had fallen to rock bottom. In the end, it did not completely collapse, but stabilized. The experts immediately fought hard and reopened the passage, allowing all the divisions to form a connection. Under the heavy encirclement of the army, He Lulan led a group of refinement path Goo Masters and formed a circular formation, activating Grey Meltdown Killer move. Lord, if we forcefully activate it, we might lose 30% of our people. An old refinement path Goo Master who was familiar with the inside information had a pale complexion as he softly advised He Lulan. Grey Meltdown Killer move naturally had its limitations. The killer move relied on coordination from the inside and outside. This required, the round's reward had to be a goo worm purposely released by He tribe's goo immortals or Shui Song Zi. But 88-point Jinyang Tower would not cooperate, it would only choose suitable goo worms from the absorbed goo worms to refine and form the round. The first round's reward was a goo worm from He Bai. Thus, He Lulan could use Grey Meltdown Killer move and use the gap that Giant Suns will had yet to completely refine to forcefully refine the goo worm. This way, the first round would be passed with the reward in hand. But the second round's reward was a wild goo. He Lulan could not communicate with these wild goo, thus Grey Meltdown Killer move could not be used. He could only obediently follow the requirements of the second round and complete it. But now that the situation was critical, He Lulan could only forcefully activate Grey Meltdown Killer move and directly skip the second round, communicating with the third round's reward goo worm. The third round's reward goo worm came from Shui Song Zi. The goo worm was half refined, but most of it was still Shui Song Zi's will. He Lulan had already cooperated with Shui Song Zi, and Shui Song Zi's will had acknowledged him. He could use Grey Meltdown to communicate with the third round's reward goo worm and refine it. This way, the third round would be passed. Once the third round was passed, the second round would have no foundation and would collapse. Because when 88-point Jinyang Tower condensed every floor, it would first form the 100th floor, then the 99th floor, the 98th floor, but if He Lulan did this, Grey Meltdown Killer move's power would increase by several times, far surpassing the refinement path Goo Master's endurance. Regardless of success or failure, a portion of refinement path Goo Masters would not be able to endure it and die on the battlefield. Dozens of refinement path Goo Masters dying is better than the entire army suffering disastrous casualties. He Lulan gritted his teeth, his eyes filled with callousness. The situation forced him to choose the lesser of two evils. Chapter 602. The refinement path Goo Masters had solemn expressions as they quickly formed the formation. Grey light gradually blossomed, connecting into one. Under everyone's expectant gazes, He Lulan waved his hand, throwing the two-edge owner token into the air. The owner token floated in the air, and a huge gray light thorn condensed in the circular formation, piercing towards the owner token. The gray light flickered, causing people to be unable to look at it directly. Now is the time. Fang Yuan had been at the periphery all along, he willed. The two-edge owner token instantly disappeared, and at the next moment, it appeared in his hand. He controlled this floor, so moving a small token was as easy as breathing for him. Without the owner token, the gray light immediately disintegrated, and the killer move gray meltdown was forcefully stopped. The refinement path Gu masters in the circular formation suddenly cried out in fear, spurting out blood. Almost all of them died in an instant. Guh. He Lulan, who was at the center of the circular formation, was no exception. He spurted out a mouthful of blood, his body seemed to have suffered a heavy blow, and he retreated several steps. My owner token. He lost his composure and shouted, his expression was filled with extreme shock, anger, and doubt. Everyone was stupefied by this change. Sun Shihan was dazed, Tang Miaoming covered her mouth, and Pei Yanfei was also dazed. Even Mo Yao's will shouted in Fang Yuan's mind, lad, what are you doing? His current owner token is only 2-edge. Including your 6-edge, it is only 8-edge. Why are you in such a hurry? Isn't it better to wait until his owner token has 4-edge? What do you know? Fang Yuan sneered, and under the cover of his wide sleeves, he quietly put away the 2-edge owner token. The entire process. It happened in front of everyone's eyes, but was done without anyone knowing. What exactly happened? Yi Luisang rushed in. Yi Luisang rushed in with an anxious expression, asking He Lulan, where is the owner token? How would I know? He Lulan's eyes were spewing fire, he was so furious that his voice rose an octave, and he started swearing. What the fuck is going on? In the records of the past, there had never been a situation where the floor master token suddenly disappeared. The killer move Grey Meltdown had been used many times by the various forces and victors in the past. Why did it disappear when it fell into He Lulan's hands? Damn it! Without the floor master's token, what should we do? Fang Yuan rushed over. He frowned. His expression was sincere, and his expression was gloomy. It was obvious that he was anxious about the situation, and he could not help but empathize with him. The killer move that everyone had high hopes for had failed at the last moment. Even the 2-edge tower master token was lost for no reason. The attacks of the green vines became more and more ferocious, like a tsunami, not giving them any time to breathe. Morale hit rock bottom. There were signs of people fleeing in disorder in many places. It's over, Shi Shui muttered to herself. Who would have thought that I would die here? Is this the final outcome? Tai Bai Yunxing smiled bitterly. Recently, he had been tormented by his conscience, and he looked extremely haggard. But suddenly, someone shouted in surprise, they can go out. Someone can go out. We can go out. It turned out that Fang Yuan did not want to kill all these people, and opened up a path of survival, allowing Gu masters to enter and leave this floor freely again. If He tribe was completely exterminated, it would definitely attract the full retaliation of He tribe's Gu immortals. Moreover, Fang Yuan still needed Tai Bai Yunxing to refine landscape as before Gu. Thus, the desperate defeat turned into a great retreat. I am actually still alive. This was too dangerous, I don't want to go in again. Back then, he had buried fixed immortal travel and gruel mud deep in northern plains, he was waiting for this moment. When 88-point Jinyang Tower condensed, it plundered the whole of northern plains' blessed land. This was the arrangement of an immortal venerable, it went up to the heavens and down to the abyss, its might unparalleled. Wooden Chicken Immortal Gu escaped Shui Song Zi and He Bai's pursuit, but was still captured by 88-point Jinyang Tower. While the Immortal Gu were already like this, the two Immortal Gu that Fang Yuan had buried underground had no intention of resisting, and were naturally collected by 88-point Jinyang Tower. After collecting them, they became the final rewards of the 21st and 34th floor. But because Giant Sun's will was in hibernation, the two Immortal Gu were in a half-refined state. Everything went according to Fang Yuan's plan. Chapter 603. The appearance of the two Immortal Gu was truly unexpected. Mo Yao was extremely shocked. What made her even more fearful was that Fang Yuan had made ample preparations. The Gu worms he used were all treasures stored in the crystal walls. The killer move he used was even more perfect than Grey Meltdown, and had stronger effects. To achieve this, it was not something that could be done by a single person, nor could it be done in a few decades. A large amount of effort was needed, at least hundreds of years were needed to infiltrate and hide the required Gu worms in the crystal walls. And to prevent them from being taken away, he would need to prepare several sets of each Gu worm. To sum it up, this was not something a person or an ordinary force could do, it had to be a super force with at least Gu immortals. Facing Mo Yao's question, Fang Yuan smiled lightly and did not speak. All of this was arranged by Central Continent's Gu immortals. But Mo Yao had died too long ago, his will was trapped in Water Pavilion and had been asleep for too long, he did not know about the changes in the outside world. Fang Yuan was someone who had been reborn, he had a huge advantage, using the Gu immortals arrangements, he completed all of this naturally. Speaking of which, he had to thank the Central Continent Gu immortals for spreading this video everywhere. Without the guidance of this video, Fang Yuan would not be so clear about the inside story. The method he used was essentially no different from He Lulan. But Fang Yuan sensed his own immortal Gu, while He Lulan sensed other people's mortal Gu. Refining immortal Gu was at least 100 times harder than mortal Gu, thus Fang Yuan did not need to be in a hurry like He Lulan. The two immortal Gu were in a half-refined state. More importantly, the refinement path killer move that Fang Yuan used was a modified version of Grey Meltdown created by Central Continent's Gu immortals. It was extremely effective, freeing the Gu master and allowing 88-point Jinyang Tower to bear the power of the killer move, eliminating the worry of backlash. At the same time, he had to thank all the Gu masters who were actively challenging the rounds. If the rounds were complete, it would be extremely difficult for Fang Yuan to cross 100 rounds and connect to the immortal Gu. However, there were only 17 checkpoints left on the 21st level, and there were even fewer checkpoints on the 34th level, only 12. After Fang Yuan took away the two immortal Gu, these two layers were unblocked. He took out the two floor master tokens. The glass floor master token was still hexagonal. After all, it was a cheating item, not an orthodox one. As for the floor owner's token he snatched from He Lulan, the number was increased from 2 corners to 4. When the two were added together, it would be 10 points. 10 points. This meant that Fang Yuan had reached the minimum requirement to obtain the Immortal Sovereign's inheritance. The Celestial Prime's inheritance. Fang Yuan clicked his tongue. Following the instructions in the image, he combined the 2 Tower Master tokens and instantly formed a 10-sided Tower Master token. Whoosh! The next moment, he disappeared on the spot. The scenery in front of him changed abruptly. By the time Fang Yuan reacted, he found himself in a void. His surroundings were pitch black. There was no sky or earth. Fang Yuan floated silently in the air. Several traces of either jade or red starlight shot over from afar. This is the true inheritance secluded domain of 88-point Jinyang Tower. To think that after so many years, I could still come here. Mo Yao's will showed a rare absent-minded expression as he muttered to himself. Oh. You've been here before. Fang Yuan's heart jumped. Back then, let's not talk about it. Kid, you being able to come here can be said to be a blessing accumulated over several lifetimes. Although you only have 10 points and can only obtain the lowest level ordinary true inheritance. But this will not stop you from gaining more experience. What you see next will definitely broaden your horizons, you will never forget it for the rest of your life. In the blink of an eye, Mo Yao's will return to normal. Fang Yuan laughed. Mo Yao's arrogant tone did not make him angry. Instead, he nodded in agreement. Giant Sun Immortal, I can't compare to him for now. Today is indeed an eye-opener for me. Saying so, he waved his hands like he was paddling in the water, moving his body forward slowly. In the previous life's video of Central Continent, a lot of content regarding this part was clearly omitted. Central Continent's Gu Immortals were even more generous than Fang Yuan, using a total of more than 10 Immortal Gu to raise the owner token to 43 points. Their gains were great, but they concealed all of it. This was no doubt to not expose their wealth, to avoid attracting the greed of others. This also made Fang Yuan even more yearn and curiosity towards Giant Sun's true inheritance. He followed a trace of blood-red starlight and got closer. As he got closer, the starlight became brighter and brighter. Finally, Fang Yuan stopped in front of a round starlight. This red starlight was the size of a bowl and was quietly floating. This is an ordinary true inheritance. If you want to understand its contents, you only need to use your mind. Mo Yao pointed out at an appropriate time. Fang Yuan cautiously probed his mind and immediately, a series of images flickered in front of him. The primitive forest was vast and boundless. Ancient trees towered into the sky, giant beasts were as large as mountains. Ha ha ha. A figure with a stocky build raised his head and laughed loudly. His figure was blurry, but his skin was of all kinds of colors, with all kinds of ancient totems carved on it. His domineering aura filled the world. He stepped on clouds and gales, his purple hair fluttered in the wind and his double pupils seemed to be burning with wildfire. Fang Yuan saw this and his heart uncontrollably pounded, even breathing became difficult. He recognized this person's identity. This is one of the 3 demon venerables of the olden antiquity era, reckless savage demon venerable. He is facing an immemorial desolate beast, primordial earth owl. Strange, why would Giant Sun's inheritance have a demon venerable's item? What is so strange about this? Giant Sun Immortal is the era's sovereign, the ruler of heaven and earth, invincible in the universe. He plundered the world and seized a portion of reckless savage demon venerable's item, placing it in his own pavilion to benefit his descendants. This is very normal. Mo Yao said. Immemorial desolate beasts were overlords that had existed since the immemorial antiquity era. Their battle strength was comparable to rank 8 Gu Immortals. This primordial earth owl had a bird's head and beast's body. It had 2 pairs of golden eyes and a dragon horn on its head. Its robust body was covered in dense rainbow-colored feathers. Its beast aura filled the world. With a light wave of its arms and legs, it could collapse mountains and break rivers. When it opened its mouth and roared, its voice could shake heaven and earth. Reckless savage demon venerable praised, "What a beast!" The primordial earth owl had intelligence no lower than humans. It was enraged upon hearing this. It opened its mouth and spat out thunder from the 9 heavens. Deep blue lightning shot out, piercing through the sky and arriving in front of reckless savage demon venerable in the blink of an eye. Fang Yuan's expression changed. The power of the lightning was vast and boundless. It was beyond imagination. Right now, he was like an ant. Even his previous life's Gu immortal self might not be able to last 3 breaths of time. But reckless savage demon venerable did not move. He let the berserk lightning strike his body. Within the lightning, his bronze-colored body was unscathed, shining brightly. His bulging muscles were like stone ramparts, the totems on his body were like living creatures, all kinds of fierce beasts were moving around his body. Within the exploding lightning plasma, reckless savage demon venerable's face actually showed an expression of enjoyment. He laughed heartily, punching with his right fist. Boom! In an instant, the world changed color, winds and clouds surged. The lightning collapsed, the mountains shook, and the forests wailed. A simple punch created 8,000 layers of intense winds, the white clouds were quickly cleared, the 9 heavens were clear, and the sunlight was dim. Just one punch. The power shocked heaven and earth, the primordial earth owl let out a miserable howl. It was an immemorial desolate beast, an overlord of an area, it was arrogant and untamed a moment ago, but now, its bones were shattered, its colorful feathers were flying everywhere, its golden eyes were filled with terror, it was lying on the ground like a dead dog. Fang Yuan was completely moved, this was the first time he had seen a venerable attack. Reckless savage demon venerable, the might of rank 9 was truly invincible in the world. 9,999 owls. Reckless savage demon venerable spoke indifferently, he opened his hand and grabbed at the air. At once, the primordial earth owl was lifted up by a formless force. Like a little chick being held in someone's hand, it was lonely and helpless, screaming in panic, transform. Reckless savage demon venerable's body shook, it expanded along with the wind, instantly turning into a giant. Great giant. Uprooting the earth to connect to the heavens, holding up the heavens. 10,000 tribulations cannot be moved, the universe cannot contain it. The giant slowly opened its mouth, the primordial earth owl struggled with all its might, but it was still sucked into the giant's mouth. The giant swallowed it in one gulp, it chewed a few times, there was a terrifying sound of mountains collapsing and thunder rumbling. With a gulp, the giant swallowed the primordial earth owl into its stomach. It actually swallowed an immemorial desolate beast that was comparable to a rank 8. Reckless savage's might was so terrifying. After eating this rank 8 desolate beast, the giant patted its stomach, its voice was like thunder, it had a look of longing for more. And on its stomach, there was a new totem, it was not eye-catching among the countless totems on its body. It was the image of the primordial earth owl. The giant seemed to sense something, it suddenly turned around and stared at Fang Yuan. Guh. Fang Yuan felt like he had suffered a heavy blow, he raised his head and spat out a mouthful of blood. His soul was shaken intensely, he felt an intense dizziness, he only recovered after a long time. Huff huff huff, he breathed roughly, he barely opened his eyes. His eyes also could not take it, 2 streams of blood tears flowing down his cheeks. Thankfully, this place did not prohibit goo worms, such a small injury only needed goo worms to heal for a while. This is the inheritance test? Fang Yuan asked as he healed. He, what kind of test is this? In his mind, Mo Yao's will was gloating, replying with an arrogant tone, this inheritance contains a trace of reckless savage demon venerable's will. Only goo immortals can bear it. But this inheritance has already been dealt with by Giant Sun Immortal after he obtained it, it can be obtained by mortals. You are still alive, it is all thanks to Giant Sun Immortal's benevolence. Fang Yuan snorted coldly, his benevolence is only towards his descendants, what does it have to do with me? This means that Giant Sun's true inheritance is not so easy to obtain, there is great danger inside. That is natural. But you have already endured this test, this true inheritance is only an ordinary true inheritance. You have the 10-edge owner token, you already have the authority to inherit it. Mo Yao said. Sure enough, when Fang Yuan probed his mind again, the door to the red light lump opened, reckless savage demon venerable's phantom no longer appeared. Primordial Grey Owl Transformation. Fang Yuan now knew that this true inheritance was a transformation path killer move. This killer move could allow a goo immortal to transform into a primordial grey owl, their battle strength would rise sharply. Reckless savage demon venerable was the ancestor of strength path, he also created transformation path. His strength could shake heaven and earth, he was the most ferocious among the 10 venerables. At the same time, he could transform into countless ferocious beasts, he had endless transformations and could be reborn from a drop of blood. Fang Yuan did not hesitate, he let go of the red light lump, letting it fly away from him. Although a true inheritance was precious, it was not suitable for the current him. Fang Yuan was very calm, he was even more expectant. To think that Giant Sun's true inheritance would involve reckless savage demon Venerable. Furthermore, this inheritance was only the lowest level of true inheritance. He really did not know what other ordinary true inheritances there were. What about the even higher unparalleled true inheritances? Chapter 604. Fang Yuan tried his best to swim towards a lump of jade light. This lump of jade light was much harder to get close to than the red light earlier. It flew slowly and kept turning. Fang Yuan chased for a while before catching it and grabbing it. It was also the size of a bowl. Fang Yuan carefully probed it with his mind. An indescribable vibration spread from the jade green light to Fang Yuan's body. Be careful, this is old immortal Kong Ju's item. In his mind, Mo Yao's will suddenly recognize this item and warned. Don't worry, it can't fly away. Fang Yuan said with certainty, his hands tightly gripping the light lump. Idiot, that's not what I'm talking about. Let go. By the time Mo Yao said that, it was already too late. A mysterious vibration came from the jade light and actually affected Fang Yuan's aperture. Fang Yuan's aperture suddenly shook. Huge waves appeared on the 90% primeval essence sea. Swish swish swish, the huge waves crashed against the aperture walls. The crystal membrane of the peak stage of rank 5 started to crack under the impact of the waves. Fang Yuan was shocked. This true inheritance test was extremely mystical and hard to defend against, it actually affected the aperture walls. Lad, quickly use goo worms to cut off your arms. Only by cutting off your arms can you have a chance of survival. Mo Yao's will shouted in Fang Yuan's mind. Cut off my arms. Fang Yuan's expression sank, cold sweat seeped out of his forehead. He tried to let go of his arms, but this jade light emitted an extremely strong suction force, firmly holding onto Fang Yuan's arms. Fang Yuan could not get rid of it, the vibration of his aperture was getting stronger. I got it. In a moment of desperation, Fang Yuan had a flash of inspiration, he moved his second aperture's primeval essence into his first aperture. The vibration spread to his second aperture through the primeval essence. The second aperture also started to shake, but this way, the danger of the first aperture was greatly alleviated. Mo Yao gasped. The jade light gradually stopped. The tremors disappeared, seemingly acknowledging that Fang Yuan had passed the test. What's going on, you actually have 2 apertures. Mo Yao shouted. The 2 apertures faced the test together, even though there were cracks on the crystal walls, they did not shatter. Kid, you really hit it well, you actually have 2 apertures. Second aperture. I didn't expect the rumors to be true. I can't believe it's been proven by you. Mo Yao's tone was filled with emotion. Fang Yuan did not want to talk about this, so he asked, you mentioned old immortal Kong Ju earlier, is he that ancient refinement path great-grandmaster? Yes, it's him. Refinement Path Great Grandmaster, throughout the history of humanity, since ancient times. There were only 3 of them. Later generations called them the 3 Elders. They are the Great Master Tian Nan of the Ancient Era, the Great Master Kong Ju of the Ancient Era, and the Great Master Ancestor Mao of the Middle Era. Mo Yao continued, among them, old freak Tian Nan had an eccentric temperament. He tried in vain to refine the sky, but he was defeated and died. Old immortal Kong Ju had the deepest understanding of apertures. He wrote the Immortal Aperture Guide, and even helped the 10 extreme physiques become immortals. Before him, there had never been a case of the 10 extreme physiques becoming immortals. And long-hair ancestor had the longest lifespan, he refined the most immortal Gu, the 88-point Jinyang Tower was refined by him. There were even rumors that he could refine lifespan Gu, luring ancestor Giant Sun to attack Langya Blessed Land. But in the end, nothing happened. Mo Yao spoke of many secrets. The 3 elders, 3 refinement path great-grandmasters, each of them was a legend. When Fang Yuan tried to get close to it, Mo Yao suddenly spoke, "Actually, you don't need to take the risk every time, since you have already collected many wisdom path goo worms, why don't you use them?" "Oh. What do you mean?" Fang Yuan did not stop. "Lad, thank me properly, I will teach you this move, it can let you avoid the true inheritances test, and you can explore most of the true inheritances contents." The method Mo Yao spoke of was not complicated. After Fang Yuan found the true inheritance light lump, the first step was to use his mind to explore it. This would trigger all kinds of tests of the true inheritance. Mo Yao suggested Fang Yuan. Use wisdom path goo worms to create a will. Send this will into the true inheritance, and after a while, take back the will. This way, the goo master could avoid close contact with the true inheritance. It was an opportunistic method. Wisdom path has thought, will, and emotion. The so-called mind. That is, thoughts and divine sense. When the mind enters, it is the exploration and exchange of thoughts. Thoughts are like water droplets, they are the easiest to create, but also the most fragile. Thus, a large number of water droplets need to gather into a stream to continue the exploration. During this process, it also needs the goo master's mind to produce them continuously. And wills are higher than thoughts, like ice. They have stronger defense, and are not easy to create. But they can be used independently, and can be retrieved when needed. Mo Yao explained. Fang Yuan was silent. "Lad, at this juncture, what are you hesitating for?" He. "I know you have been collecting wisdom path information, and are also purchasing wisdom path goo worms. Your special will goo, deliberate will goo, toy will goo, notice goo, and new will goo. If you don't use them now, when will you use them?" Mo Yao laughed. After pausing for a while, she continued to persuade, "The current you should be clear, my will is living in your mind, and is deeply entangled with you. And the will you create using these goo worms will be pure and flawless. I cannot infiltrate it. Weren't you always on guard against me?" This method has a huge advantage. You can use this method to avoid the true inheritance test, and investigate the secret of the unparalleled inheritance. Unparalleled inheritances are much more valuable than ordinary inheritances. "What are you?" Fang Yuan's gaze was hesitant. The relationship between him and Mo Yao had always been like this. They did not make it clear. To think that Mo Yao would reveal it at this moment. What was her intention? Was it really like what she said, that she wanted Fang Yuan to return the rank 7 Immortal Goo House Water Pavilion to Spirit Affinity House? Mo Yao's frank expression. It made Fang Yuan's emotions fluctuate. Maybe, he was too vigilant, and was on guard against Mo Yao. But wills were not like thoughts, thoughts were very simple, and were not good at deceiving. Land spirits formed from obsessions spoke the truth. But wills were different, they were the combination of many thoughts, and were more complex than thoughts. Deceiving others was also possible. Fang Yuan shook his head, dispersing the chaotic thoughts in his mind. Now was not the time to think about this. Undeniably, Mo Yao's words were completely on Fang Yuan's side, and successfully convinced him. Fang Yuan took out the wisdom path goo worms he had purchased. He had little Hu immortal land spirit, and could communicate with jewel yellow skies at any time. Standing on the shoulders of a goo immortal, it was easy to purchase mortal goo. Right now, the 8 wisdom path goo in his hands could all form wills, but they were all different. Special will goo could create special wills, and under certain circumstances, it could trigger special actions. Deliberate will goo could create willpower, and when this will entered the body, it would be like carving on a rock. The difficulty of getting rid of it was several times higher than other wills. Toy goo, it produced toy goo. This was one of the wills that could create emotions. There were also mindful gu, new will gu, battle will gu, and so on. What was worth mentioning was that these wisdom path gu worms could create different types of wills, and could also restrain the corresponding wills. For example, special will gu could create special wills, and could also devour special wills. Deliberate will gu could create willpower. It was hard to get rid of it, but as long as the right medicine was found, and the deliberate will gu could be easily gotten rid of. Why did Fang Yuan want to purchase these gu worms? It was because of this. He wanted to deal with Mo Yao's mysterious will. Unfortunately, he had not found a single gu worm that could deal with Mo Yao's will since he started buying. In this situation, choosing the will gu was not important. Fang Yuan casually chose the special will gu, and injected his primeval essence, producing a will. It looked like Fang Yuan himself, a young man with dark eyes, but different from his main body. His face was firm, and had a resolute expression. Wills can only be stored in the soul. If you want to send this will out to explore, you need at least one small soul worm. Mo Yao reminded. Small soul gu was a rank 1 soul path gu. It was extremely ordinary, but it was an important foundation of soul path. Many higher rank soul path gu worms were refined step by step using it as a foundation. Mo Yao's reminder was somewhat unnecessary. Before she finished speaking, Fang Yuan summoned a gu worm. It had no physical body and was the size of a palm. Like a butterfly, it swayed slowly like a shadow. If a normal person tried to grab it, it would pass through their body. This was a rank 2 big soul worm. Fang Yuan lightly patted it, sending his special will into the big soul worm's body. Next, he mobilized the big soul worm to fly towards the nearest green and white true inheritance light lump. The big soul worm's speed was much faster than him swimming. Soon, it entered the true inheritance light lump. After a while, the damaged big soul worm flew back shakily. Fang Yuan retrieved his will and looked at it carefully. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.